I will open this evening with our land acknowledgement. As we meet today, I would like to take a moment to recognize the importance of the land on which we are gathered. The municipality of West Nipissing respectfully acknowledges that we are located on the homelands of the Anishinaabe peoples, on the traditional territory of the Nipissing, Temagami, and Dokis First Nations covered by the Robinson-Huron Treaty. We honor and recognize their historical connection to the land and value their significant contributions in shaping and strengthening our communities. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility towards reconciliation and improving our understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their culture. First item of the agenda, I will take any declarations of pecuniary interest. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, through you, for the fire and emergency services portion.
Okay, thank you. And the paperwork's been filed with the clerk. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk.
It is moved by Councillor Pellerin and seconded by Councillor Gagné. Be it resolved that the agenda for the council budget meeting held on November the 26th, 2024 be adopted as presented.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. We move on to item number 3, our budget presentation. We did get through the operating portion of the initial presentation yesterday and are moving into capital at this time. And with that, I will pass the floor to our CAO, Mr. Barbo.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. I found yesterday went fairly well with great presentation of the information and operations, and hopefully you'll find the same with capital. Of course, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty a little bit with respect to what we would like to see done with the limited resources that we have, and so we'll be speaking to you with respect to that. Yesterday, Council asked for a few reports or a few explanations as well. If I can remember them, because I've been busy in a few directions, but I believe we provided or will be providing the library information, and for that discussion when it comes to the library increase. I believe we also provided the hospital background information that we were able to uncover, I suppose, in very short notice in their request. And there was also, and I think it's on your desk, but there was also a request by, I believe, Councillor Pellerin with respect to getting more information with respect to the dedicated reserves, and going through that and explaining that. I hope that was you. Let's see. So tonight, I think that for this to flow, I think that you're right, Madam Mayor. We'd like to go over the capital booklet, but prior to that, I think it would be informative to Council, and I think it would assist Council that Ms. Craddock went through what she prepared today with respect to the dedicated reserves and how they work, because it affects what we're speaking to in the booklet as well. And so after that, if you'll indulge me, after her presentation, then I could assist by, providing some information on some of the requests that Council made and how we're handling it, some of the challenges that we're not even able to fund right now that are coming before us, and some of the planning and strategizing that we've been doing for the last little while and very intensely today. If there are any bruises on me, let me know. So with that, I will pass it to Ms. Craddock, if you don't mind, and she can present the dedicated reserve portion and the capital budget workbook.
So the dedicated reserve is actually sort of a good jumping spot to look at the capital plan, especially with some of the challenges we've had this year and what we've seen sort of going forward. So I've given you kind of a summary of these dedicated reserves, sort of clumped by the area that typically uses them. Outside of this, we actually do have a few other dedicated reserves that are not on this sheet, that are sort of smaller things that are specialized things. Like, so we have cash in lieu of parkland that we get from planning files. There's a really small Evansville playground reserve that we've been carrying for a number of years. We discussed it, I think, in a prior council. We probably should kind of bring those ones back periodically just to make sure that each council sort of confirms those and looks at what those are. We obviously have the land disposition reserve that we started last year, and so we do have funds from sale of land that is also in reserve. So these are the ones that are typically tied to the capital, routine capital projects that go on here. So what you have here is kind of a projected use of the reserve. Now, I am going to tell you that, again, in doing the projections, this is going to vary a little bit from how it will actually be for accounting purposes at year end. So for accounting purposes at year end, our reserves will only reflect the expenses that have actually happened. But for the purposes here, what I'm showing you is the expenses that are all committed. So we have a Zamboni that we awarded at council. We haven't received the Zamboni yet. If we don't receive it before the end of the year, it kind of gets held in a sort of like a work in progress or a committed thing, but it won't actually come out of reserve till we actually receive it. But I've included it in our projected here, just so that when you're looking at what's left for reserve, what you're seeing is just kind of the free reserve, the amount that's available to be used on new projects. It's not committed to projects that are ongoing. We have projects in Public Works with the Ethel Street, King Street stuff that will be in the same boat, that they'll be in work in progress at the end of the year. But all that is kind of captured as if it's occurred, so that the ending balance on our reserves is kind of what you have available, or what the managers have available to use. I'm going to jump back and forth a little bit as I kind of roll through things here. And so, we'll start with how the process of things work across. We'll talk a little bit about asset management. We'll talk about what the proposals are, but we're going to do a bit of jumping back and forth. All right. If I lose you in the jumping back and forth, just kind of wave and I'll back it up. So if we look at a fire, because they're at the top here, and so fire, the opening balance is exactly that. So that's what it was at the year end 2023. It's how we started 2024. The additions that go in, again, across everyone's column, that was what was approved in the 2024 budget. The only thing that's sort of outside of that is that little bit in fire that goes along with the fire mark reserve. So fire mark is that insurance recovery we have. You'll see it as revenue on your operating statements. You'll see it get transferred out to reserve. With the agreement that we have with Firemark, the money must be used on equipment or training. And so we put it out into reserve until we need it. And we have used it on and off over the years to help supplement our equipment reserve. And you'll see that's what's happening in 2025 with it as well. And so that's the only one that sort of wasn't part of your original budget approval, because that happens through the year as it happens, or as the year rolls on. And so the column that says reserve means that's what everyone had, therefore, kind of available to use in 2024. Projected expenditures are what has been spent to date and what is kind of committed going forward. Now, fire had two pieces of fleet on its capital plan, one carrying from 2023, the other from 2024. So it had two pieces of fleet on its 2024 plan that didn't get purchased. Because they haven't been awarded, they haven't been tagged, they haven't had any of that stuff go on, they're not showing here as projected. And it's also the reason why you see them kind of coming back again in the fleet capital plan for 2025. But all that lands with, at the end of 2024, they're going to have about $2.2 million of funds available to them. Then it was sort of a status quo as far as requesting an additional injection into capital. So that's that addition. And again, with the exception of that part from the fire mark, you can see it's the same as what happened in 2024. So there's no difference to the taxpayer as far as the injection to reserve. It's sort of a status quo from last year. And so it leaves them with 2.9 million available for their 2025 year. Because fleet is the big part of fire, I am going to take you to the fleet schedule, which is page 7 of your capital plan. We call them fire apparatus, but somehow that sounds better than fire trucks. And so you see that they have, the first two are ones that were, again, were scheduled to be replaced, have already been seen on capital plans and are carrying forward because we have not had the purchase of fleet yet. And then we've got a new one added. Now, when we talk sort of about where your reserves are going to go, if we take all of that capital, and we'll talk about their equipment and all the rest later, they're going to end up with only, at the end of the 2025, only $700,000 left in reserve. Most of that is sitting in their facility reserve. And so we started a facility reserve for fire quite a number of years ago, sort of building up for doing facility replacement, new construction. Certainly it started with concerns out in the living initially, but it's just, so that's one of those things we talk about. Sometimes when you're putting money into reserve, it is for building up for future opportunities. And that's what the transfer to facility reserve has been for the fire. It's been building up for future items. Now they do use the facility reserve every year on just doing some capital maintenance, doing roof, doing substantial repairs inside, things like that. So they are using it, but that is the part with the balance growing. I'm going to take a moment and just talk a little bit about how the reserves work as far as dedicated or things like that. Council at some point in the past, has sort of dedicated these reserves. There's a little bit of a difference with community services, but has dedicated these reserves. So at some point in the past, council said, we are going to start a fire facility reserve. Now, if at some point council said, hey, you know what, we want to reallocate those funds, council can do that, but it would have to come back to council, and council would say, no, I want to move stuff from this dedicated to that dedicated. You have a little bit of flexibility on some of these reserves, some of them you don't. But you can do that if there was a need that we wanted that a fire truck, that the chief actually gets his 3 fire trucks lined up and it's going to be 2 million, not 1.9. We might have a conversation with council about removing some of that dedicated reserve. But most of the reserves are dedicated, and that council has at some point in the past established that they're going to be these types of reserves. So we are going to have 5-year capital plans back to you shortly. In the 5-year capital plans, what you're going to see is you're going to see 2025, you're going to see 2026 with a lot of deferred stuff, and then you're going to see 27, 28, 29. And then those 5-year capital plans will come back to council, and each year kind of the deferral shuffling around will just move things back further. I know this might sound a little bit odd to start now, but what we need to be able to show both to council, to the public, and to the province is the amount of deferred stuff that's happening. So when we get the 5-year capitals and you see 2026 and it's got $11 million in public works and 4 more fire trucks in fire, we just need to be able to show that these things are being deferred and show what that deficit is in the overall funding of assets. And it's not just West Nipissing. That's a municipality issue altogether with funding of assets. And I could give you the history on that as well, but we won't do that today. So then again, continuing with fire, so that's their fleet. Fire has a little bit of stuff that's sitting in equipment. It's going to be, I think, my last page. It's page 10. So the biggest cost for fire is the SCBA's, self-contained breathing apparatus. I don't know, fire department seems to think they're kind of essential. But fire is really regulated on all of its assets, both its fire trucks, as far as the lifespan the fire trucks can have and the fire trucks can be before we have to start moving them out to smaller fire halls or disposing of them. But the same with our SCBA's, the equipment, even the bunker suits, they all have got these life expectancies. And so the chief is sort of getting caught up, and the prior chief did this as well. The prior chief did it in a couple big chunks, and Chief Lufin is working on getting a really regular rotation, so we're not seeing these huge chunks at kind of just once every 5 years, but we have sort of a bit more of a smoothing on the units. But none of these units are cheap. There's nothing inexpensive in fire, and we have a roster of around 100, volunteer firefighters, that we have to equip. And so it's sort of a constant turnover on that. So again, as part of that plan, let me just get back in here. We see the SCBA's and the bottles, again, part of that rotational schedule. Helmets, part of a rotational schedule. Portable pumps, and again, we've got portable pumps at our stations connected with on our trucks, so it's just again a replacement at end of life, end of useful life to keep our pumps replaced. A pressure exhaust fan. The washers, dryers, and this is the one when you're looking at your our funds here. There is a potential grant associated with that one. So the chief has actually already applied for a grant. I think there's the grant that's going to be 5 years of possible grant. Is that correct, Chief?
Yes.
Yeah. For equipment purchases. So he's put in this application for the dryers. Now you'll see kind of by where the numbers end up at the end, there's not a lot of equipment reserve left over. So if the grant's not approved, then the chief has talked about that, this might be one of those things that gets staged in over a few years, simply because without the grant, it's going to be very difficult to purchase all that equipment in one shot for the washers, dryers. And then an investment in technology to get actually software conversion and to get the command vehicles to have tablets actually in the truck, so they can be doing reports in the truck, so they can access stuff in the trucks and be working in the command trucks. So again, you look, it's going to then come back to the reserve. So like I said, that the equipment purchases, we're going to use that fire mark reserve this time. We needed to sort of offset those equipment purchases. We've got the grant, and it's going to chew up most of the reserve for equipment for fire in this year. The same you see with fleet. We're going to chew up most of that reserve in fleet. We're leaving, potentially $68,000 in a fleet reserve, which doesn't buy another fire truck. And so you can see from the estimates on the fire chief that the fleet estimate is now $600,000 or $700,000 for a fire truck. We're putting in $500,000 a year. We are potentially going to be in trouble by next year. And so there's challenges, and the fire department has been fairly effective in prior years at finding reasonable deals on trucks. We talked yesterday, and shuffling trucks from station to station to maximize lifespan on trucks. But it certainly is a challenging environment for fire. A little bit in facilities. If you just sort of flip back a page, most of the facilities is community services, but back on the bottom of page 9, there is a little bit of facility work in the fire hall. When community services undertook their facility assessments, the field fire hall was actually picked up because it was attached to our field library, so it all got picked up. The living fire hall has been assessed sort of separately as far as its roof, and has been assessed just with needing the re-shingle work. We did a partial work on the roof. It's quite a number of years ago, just to sort of hold things, but now they've said it really just needs to have the roof done. So just a couple things with facilities in the fire department for 2025. Are we okay to move on to public works, or?
I think we probably have a question. Councillor Gagne.
Thank you. I'd just like to know, since we are chewing up a big portion of the fleet capital budget this year, I'm just curious, what do we need to replace in the next 2 years, since technically there won't be any money? So do we have a need for the next few years, or are we good with the 2 that we're currently looking to purchase?
3.
3, sorry.
So if I look at the chief's capital replacement, we've got the 2 that were sort of outstanding from previously. There should have actually been 2 additional ones in 2025, 2 more in 2026. It's steady. We're replacing 2 or 3 vehicles almost every year. A couple of times that it's just the command vehicles, which are a little bit less, but you're looking at over $1 million for the next 6 years. That's what they actually need. If we were able to find the vehicles, and if we were able to replace everything on the schedule, and that's the challenge too, is finding the vehicles. But if we were able to find the vehicles and replace everything on the schedule, you're looking at $1.4 million right through to 2030.
Yeah. So I guess I just want to know on my side is, how can we actually push this? Because we won't be able to purchase 2 vehicles for the next 3 years on the capital budget that we have. So which means we either increase, or can the life expectancy of some of those trucks be pushed out a year or 2 to be able to kind of stagger that every 2 or 3 years we'll be buying a new truck and not 2 per year for the next 10, 15 years for the life expectancy? I guess that's my question. I'm just curious.
Take it.
I can take that if you will. Through you, Madam Chair. The fleet, we have pushed it. One of the problems that happened is during the amalgamation. In 99, a lot of those trucks were purchased at that time. So a lot of the trucks are anywhere from 1999 to 2002 models. This is where they've been extended. We're moving them around, shuffling them around. Unfortunately, that's one of the challenges. What we're trying to do is offset the years of the vehicle so we don't run into this again in the future. I have pushed the capital purchases on the vehicles a couple times, moved them around. Looking at the pickup trucks, for example, the command trucks, see if we can fix them, get them through another couple of years. The bigger trucks, again, looking at, okay, we're going to move this one to a less busy station, I'll say, and through the maintenance program and stuff, which is, as you've seen in the operating budget yesterday, has increased substantially, but that's also trying to make the vehicles last longer. So we are trying and shuffle them around to avoid getting into the predicament that we're currently headed. It's council's decision if they want to turn around and look at past practice of purchasing trucks through sole sourcing out of used equipment, be it out of the States or other manufacturers and suppliers. Again, that's council's decision. If that's the direction council provides, then I will go down that path.
Thank you. Can I have a follow-up question?
Yes, certainly.
At the same time, since you presented the fire master plan, you have about $700,000 left over for building repairs. But once you do try to implement the master plan, you did mention amalgamating some fire station and building some new ones. Is there enough money in the capital facilities to be able to kind of do those switches? Do you know currently, or?
A quick answer? No. Well, that's why, so we're underfunded, but we're underfunded in a lot of our areas. It sounds like a sales pitch, but that's just the reality. To your point, though, when you're looking at certain aspects or certain recommendations of consolidation with respect to that, the consolidating 2 into 1, of course, would be problematic because that involves construction perhaps, right? And so that will be problematic. But we have a window of opportunity, Councillor Gagne, to start looking at how we handle those things. So one of them, is looking at suppliers that are innovative to buy us some time, and the previous chief was able to do that, but as indicated, it's not as prevalent anymore and not as possible. The other aspect, when we get down to it, is, and I unfortunately Max, the 2,000-year-old mouse here, and I think I started in 2000, is that those fire trucks were purchased on a loan originally in 1999. There was a grant from the province on a transitional grant, but there was also some purchases. So we're going to have to look, and we'll be speaking to some of our deficits and how we could, because I know council, and I'm jumping ahead, council also has some legacy and some wishes that they want to move forward and not just, slow the sinking ship. So, we're going to be looking at in 2025 and bringing forward to you early in the year strategies to get caught up. So obviously in the next year for fire, we have to look at some of our strategies to stay caught up. But to disagree with the chief, we're not, if we can't get a truck, we'll have to make do with the trucks we have, except that we know and council knows that this is a challenge, right? And it's been an ignored area. I can tell you that in 25 budgets, and I'm not blaming, obviously not blaming this council, but past council have really been reticent to raise those vehicle replacement levels, because the history was just pay as you go. And that was the mentality of early councils in the early 2000s and whatever. So it was a very hard sell to tell council that you're putting money away for a rainy day, more or less. But we're trying to, get them to stabilize and do that. And then the other impact is a $350,000 truck, probably 3-4 years ago, is now $650,000. It just went crazy, which is something that the chief is dealing with and that Public Works is dealing with. So I digress, but the basis for your question is, there's a real challenge there that we're going to have to get creative and get on top of.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. May I ask a question first, just because it kind of follows on Councillor Gagne, and then I'll go to you. Okay. So the total fleet, how many command vehicles? You have 5 overall?
3.
Okay, that's lifespan. So 3 command vehicles, and then you have the 4 trucks at Station 1, and then there's 1 truck in Everlake. I'm just trying to get an idea of the size of the fleet overall.
It's 16 fire trucks, fire apparatus.
Yeah, so 16 apparatus.
Okay,
Other than Tomico, and so Tomico has a pickup truck that's servicing that area.
okay,
Crystal Falls has a small pumper.
okay.
All other stations have 2 vehicles, a tanker and a pumper.
Okay, including cash bay?
Cashway has a spare pumper sitting in that station right now. We sold off the old ladder truck that was in there and the old
Okay.
pumper that was in there.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay. And just to get an idea of like the scope of what you're dealing with, right? So that we have, Councillor,
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
St.
So my question is fairly simple. What we're looking at, the pricing that you're giving us, that's all for new trucks, correct?
Yes.
Okay, because I know in the past we used to buy, used trucks or whatnot, but the pricing you're giving us is for brand new. Okay.
Right, and so the wiggle room, if there is one, would be to creatively find that, but we can't bank on it.
Yeah, no, totally understand. Thank you.
okay, other questions? So Councillor Rivard, I see you, Councillor Restel, you'll be next.
Thank you, through. That was kind of something that I was wondering, like if this is 3 new trucks and if it's possible to find 3 used or in the States, like would that equate to 5 or 6 or that just be 1 extra one,
Well,
right? Because I'm thinking
Well,
after,
certainly it would give you more. It would give you less life, right? So, when you buy a new vehicle, you got the full life, and then when you buy a used one, they have an expected life. So you're borrowing time, but yes, it gets you out of Dodge, so to speak. Does Dodge make it? But the issue as indicated is that everybody is in the same boat right now. And so we're not different from a lot of fire departments who are struggling, and they're all looking for those things. So they're harder to find and they're more problematic when we do. So it's certainly, there are a few websites, and we certainly are looking.
I guess the follow up, the reason I was mentioning was after you mentioned that some less busy sites, right? So those I would definitely be in favor for sure of getting a used truck, because then that life expectancy would be longer too, right? And then I'm also just noticing, I looked real quickly, like I'm not sure if this was a grant available, but in September of 2023, it looks like there's this news release from the province of Ontario that they're investing in fire safety in the north, just in September of 2023, $47 million for fire trucks and stuff. Like, I'm not too sure if that would have been something that we would have been able to jump into.
So through you, Madam Chair, couple points to your question. One, in 2018, a 2,000 gallon tanker was with a pump on it was worth in around 300,000. Pricing out last year after COVID and the cost of everything in electronics going in, they're now over the 600,000 mark for a tanker. That's nothing fancy on the truck. That's commercial cabin chassis with a 2,000 gallon tank and a pump on it. So it just goes to show you the price increase. Same with vehicles, pickup trucks and stuff. What you used to pick up for 30,000 is now a $70,000 truck. On the part of used vehicles, you're putting a Band-Aid over the problem, exactly as our CAO has mentioned. So that's a consideration that would have to be looked at. The other part, the grant that you were speaking of, that money was allocated to small municipalities to try and offset because they're way behind. They don't have the tax base to be able to maintain the expected service levels.
They qualify.
They qualify, that's. Okay.
I will try the best I can to get whatever grants we can.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll go to Councillor Nestu.
Think I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, thank you, yes.
Okay. Just through you, Madam Mayor, just a question again. I think I understand what the answer will be, but talking about the fire master plan, and there was some discussion and no decisions made, obviously, about, you know, if it's amalgamation or maybe closing some of the sites. Is that gonna, and I, through discussion, I think I got the answer. Is that gonna have, could that have an effect on the long-term fleet situation in terms of needing vehicles? Or with moving stations or closing some locations, would that just mean that we're going to relocate those vehicles to others to keep up with the calls or demand?
You, Madam Mayor, it could mean a smaller rationalization of equipment for sure. So, you know, you have an economy of scale, so you don't have to disperse as many, but it isn't, you know, taking 4 and bringing it down to 2. So that wouldn't happen necessarily, because you obviously have a bigger station that services, you know, a larger area. But certainly theoretically, there'll be some rationalization that takes place with that. So some of those things, I don't think they're going to be overly material to the major hit financially that we're requiring. Some of the short-term things that the chief will be bringing forward to you in the new year will have some rationalization in it, where it's kind of easy to just, I can't comment because in my experience, commenting on specific areas creates issues. So we have to roll that out, but there will be some savings, but to the scope of what is necessary, regulations and cost increases, we're going to have to next year work on facing those challenges.
That's great. Thanks. I appreciate the response.
Councillor Larrabee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Part of my question was exactly what Jamie just asked. So thank you, Jamie. But the other one, the life expectancy of our vehicles, like the pumper or tanker, that is 25 years, if I'm not mistaken.
If you go under the fire underwriter's recommendations, 10 years as a frontline pumper, that once it's done as a frontline pumper, what they class as your main response vehicle, it can be pushed to 20 years.
20 years.
20 years, providing you're still doing the servicing and the testing to make sure the pumps are operating at their efficiencies and everything else. It has been known, and I've done it in the past because of budget constraints, pushing them up to 25 years in a not as busy station, for example. I definitely wouldn't recommend 25 years for a frontline pumper here at Station 1. One of the other outer stations, perhaps, but again, you're running a challenge because now you're breaking down more often. The replacement equipment is harder to find, parts and labor becomes more expensive. You lose, you're not saving.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Councillor Pellerin.
Yeah, just on the same thought. So the regulations are 10 years. It's not mandatory, but it's
strongly recommended.
So on that base, like, there's 2 ways to look at it. You're talking about the life expectancy in years, but let's say us compared to Sudbury or Toronto, when the trucks go out to twice a day or whatever, those life expectancy are way shorter.
10 years max for a frontline truck in the city of Toronto, for example.
So for sure that, like you said, it's a good idea to push it to 25 years because some of them probably has very low hours on it.
Yes.
So some of them are practically still new.
Mhm.
So it's a
So-
good idea.
Councillor Pattern, just, it's not so much the mileage that is put on a vehicle, especially when it comes to fire apparatus. Unlike Public Works where they're out traveling day in, day out, fire apparatus respond, so they go from cold to respond at a reasonable rate, arrive on scene, and then they could be idling for anywhere up to 6, 12 hours as you're pumping and stuff. So you're not putting wear and tear on the transmission, the drivetrain, but you are on the engine and the pump systems, and that's where the failure comes in. And that's why they recommend that 10, maximum 20 years.
I guess so the bottom line is that I don't know that it changes anything unless council, and I don't think there's anything that we can do other than to start to fund for it. But in this budget year, it hasn't been contemplated because we have to look at much more drastic strategies going forward with it. But to increase the reserve was not what was contemplated in this budget. So it's something we'll have to bring back to you and not wait till budget next year to come up with some solutions.
Okay, anybody else questions on the capital? Councillor Larrabee?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, this is what I would definitely agree on is if we could plan on that master plan that we're looking at, we will need definitely some funding if we agree to move forward with it. So,
Right,
yes.
so
We'll have to have some discussion
in
on it.
general, there's a lot more need and want in this municipality than there is money. And so we are going to have to either look at curbing what you think you want or finding creative ways to get it. And we have been creative for the last 20, 25 years, and we've had quite a bit of success. We are more challenged now than we have been since in my tenure. We've had difference in my tenure where funding allocations have changed, and we've had these windfalls like CRF back in the day, and this was before 2003, 2004. So we've had buffers, but as I indicated, it's no different anywhere else. The upper levels of government talk and say that they're, and they put press releases on what they're saying they're making available. And then when you go after it, it's a different story. So they need to balance their budgets as well. So anyway, if Elisa could continue, then we're going to get down to hopefully talk about expenditure levels.
Okay, so I'm going to take you through Public Works, and Public Works has got a lot of stuff going on. Again, the columns work the same for everybody. When we look at the reserves that Public Works has, so Public Works has reserves that were kind of dedicated by council, and then Public Works uses funds that are in a reserve that have got kind of less discretionary ability with them. So Public Works typically maintains a fleet reserve and an infrastructure reserve, which is kind of and all other else. The Front Street one was just a temporary one that was set up. It may have been at the end of last council. It was a little while ago, just with a project that didn't quite get completed, and it's been used to offset the municipal portion of the work that we've got that have been going on out front there, the last little bit of it. So that's why, it was this Front Street one, and that happens sometimes as well. Sometimes there's money that gets set aside for specific projects or specific things. They go into their own little reserve, and when the project's done, it collapses. So we use the rest of that reserve this year in the Front Street, and so going forward, we're just going to have the fleet and the infrastructure. Now, aside from the infrastructures that council dedicated, or the reserves that council dedicated, Public Works uses gas tax, OCIF, and NORDS. NORDS is for resource development, and it's actually only a couple of years old. I don't know if it's going to be a guaranteed funding one. It doesn't look like it right now. It was 5 years of funding. 2025 is the last year that they're giving us funds, and then we've got another year to sort of use the funds after that. So gas tax, the gas tax amounts have been reasonably stable recently. We've come up gradually since So 2019, it was $871,000 a year. 2025, we're looking at $955,000 a year. So it has come up for us, and it is always been the sort of the largest sort of stable funding that municipalities had for infrastructure. Back in the day, gas tax was tied to all kinds of reporting requirements as far as, energy saved and greenhouse gases reduced and things like that. They actually broadened the scope of gas tax on projects that it could be applied to quite a number of years ago now. And so there are a number of projects gas tax can be applied to, including things like community services projects. We have typically kept gas tax solely within public works. So it's always been part of their budget. OCIF was one that came around, again, starting about 10 years ago now, and it came as both fixed, like a formula based, initially depending on our population, depending on our asset level. And there used to be an application based one to OCIF as well. And so the project where we did the repaving going out to the museum was one of the application based, because they would always sort of guarantee that every 2 years you could top up to $2 million depending on what your amounts were. And so they eventually took away the application and just made it just straight a fixed formula, which in a little way is better, because it did give us that secure funding. There's funding. It doesn't matter. You don't have to compete for it. There's funding. The problem with the OCIF is how much it has declined in recent years. So, we were up to almost 1.3 million for 2022 and 2023, and we've been on a steady decline since that time. So they're now using our asset replacement values on our calculating our grants, and I thought we had fairly heavy asset replacement values, and they're fairly well established because we had the roads needs study. We have a lot of work that's being done, and we ended up with this sort of clawback in 2025. So the allocation for 2025 is just the 934, 837. But the rest sort of works the same with public works. So when we look at where the projected expenses is what we expect to use by the end of the year, or has been committed to projects. Even if the projects are going to be considered work in progress at the end of the year and finished in 2025, the funds are sort of committed. So you look at the ending balances that Public Works is going in with $3 million of ending reserve balances. And then we're looking at the additions for 2025. So the top two lines are the transfers from reserve coming from the operating budget. And so you'll see that both fleet and infrastructure are the same as 2024. And then the gas tax, the NORDS, and the OCIF are the funding allocations for 2025, which gives them $7.3 million sort of available, including their fleet numbers. We'll look at their fleet first, again on page 7. And I'm going to look at their fleet first because it's sort of the simpler bit. So the grader that you see here is the grader that council approved just last meeting, that Public Works could go ahead and get rolling with that, so that we don't end up too far behind the 8 ball on getting that, because not only do we have cost concerns with all of our heavy equipment, we've got long lead times in getting stuff delivered sometimes as well. So they are looking at replacing a loader, the grader that was approved, a light vehicle, and then just some equipment that's attached to fleet, which is why it's sitting here rather than the equipment. It's just stuff that's attached to fleet. So they've got a request for 1.1 million to expend this year. You can see there's going to leave a little bit in the reserve at the end of the year for fleet. So that part is the easier part. If we now go look at the infrastructure schedule on Public Works, so that's the beginning part of stuff here. Starting on page 5 for the infrastructure part. So if you've had a chance to do the math, you'll see that when we eliminate the proposed, the fleet part from the proposed expenditure and just what's left, it's not going to quite total what they've given you here on this, the schedule, and I'm going to walk you through why. So the first two projects, Borgo Street and Church Street, we've applied for Hughes funding. So it's housing enabled water services funding. So we applied in the first round for it and we're unsuccessful. I think there was only 4 communities north of Barrie, north of Aurelia that were successful. Yeah, oh,
You said church.
yeah, oh, sorry, Virgo and Church. Sorry, thank you, Liz. Yeah, so the top 2 projects are sort of, just Borgo's is the Hughes funding. So
Sorry, which are the Hughes funding?
the Borgo,
Church.
the Borgo, no, just the Borgo.
Just Borgo.
Just the Borgo. Yes. And so we were not successful in the first round of the Hughes funding. We applied with the same project, but more supporting documentation. They had made it sound like we were going to hear really fast, and we have not heard yet. So the 50,000 that's in here is for sort of the beginning of design work. However, it's conditional on the Hughes. Ms. Henning has said that if we're not successful in the funding, then the design work will get pushed and we'll do sort of a whole design build in the following year. So this one is sort of just conditional on the funding.
Question just on that project. Is that in order to connect Borgo Street to Goulard Road to facilitate the development of the property there?
To connect the water and sewer, not the actual street.
So the water and sewer is the Hughes funding, the housing enabling infrastructure, and then a separate project would that be the responsibility of the developer?
The development off of Coruscant Road would be the responsibility of the developer, yes.
But the intention is for the municipality to run water and sewer from the current end of Borgo to Coruscant.
Yes, well, just a dead end. Basically, the water and sewer on Borgo is only designed to take the small, I think there's only 30 homes there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not large enough to accommodate the 200 something homes that would potentially be built as part of that development. So it will be upsizing it to accommodate that additional development.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so
Just it was unclear where that.
Yeah, and the
Where the
Hughes
actual-
funding is for the municipality to do their portion of things. The developer is still responsible for everything within their site, and it's just for the municipal part to
Yeah.
sort of facilitate whatever the developer is doing in their site. You know, so it's not that the municipality is then running, you know, all their water for them. They're still on their own for that. It's just to upgrade our infrastructure to support their development. So if we look at the Church Street part, that is actually combined with a water and wastewater work. You'll recall the last couple of years, water and wastewater was successful in ICIP funding to do all this work that's gone on, sort of the John Street work, and it's part of a looping and sort of facilitating our water infrastructure there. And so there's always a little portion of public works that comes along with some of the planning, some of the, when water and sewer is actually doing the project, public works assumes if we're doing storm at the same time and things that aren't covered by the grant that relate to public works. So we've had these projects that are sort of these dual projects going on. And with this, sort of that last piece of that project would be, again, with the church would be sort of that last piece of the project connecting back to the water tower and completing the loop. Coruscant Road, again, design only in this year. It is one that is eligible for NORDS. So NORDS is for things that are leading towards resource development. So to this point, we've put all of our NORDS funding on the Dokeith Road. And so that's where the Dokeith Road, we are going to have some bits left over beyond just finishing up Dokeith Road. And so they've said that Coruscant Road, because of the tie to Goulard Lumber at the end, would be eligible for some of that funding. So that, again, assigning some of that NORDS funding to the Coruscant Road design. And I probably should have pointed out when we're looking at, again, at the infrastructure, I've made this column on the side kind of just with schedules. That ties back to the roads needs study. And so in the roads needs study, they had sort of replacement, refurbishment of roads, and they also had a maintenance schedule. So there's these two schedules that are in the back in your roads needs study, and they're obviously both big components of capital work in public works. So just because it's coming from the maintenance schedule doesn't make it less significant than the sort of replace now schedule, because maintenance means that we can keep these roads lasting longer without getting into the replace now. And some of them you'll see now, some of them you'll see a little bit later on. And if they're ones that are kind of from a later on schedule, it's often because it's tied to funding or it's tied to work the water and sewer is doing. And so that's why you kind of see this flexibility of stuff that's happening in that schedule column, but that you'll be able to tie back to your roads needs study. You'll be able to find these pieces. So again, if we look at the asphalt work, John Street, Nipissing to Clark, again, that's combined with that water and wastewater work, all that looping that's going on, all that fixing that portion. So this is just the public works portion. So when we do those projects, public works will take on sidewalks, curbs and gutters, storm water. That part becomes their portion, while water and sewer budget absorbs, you know, the installation of the pipes in the ground, the connection and all that. So, but we try to time these projects together because obviously it just makes sense. If we're digging down, we're going to do the rest at the same time. So we do try to time the projects together. Dover Court Highway 64 is actually a project that we have applied for Connecting Link funding on. So the 60,000 you see there is just the municipal portion. The whole project is sort of 600 and change. So this would be our 10% if we were successful in the Connecting Link funding. It is a project that's conditional on the Connecting Link funding. That application went in just a couple of weeks ago, so I expect we'll hear in the new year probably on that one. Front Street, obviously we've done a whole lot of work on Front Street. We'll have a second intake on Connecting Link later this year. We've just put this one in as a, hey, maybe we'll get lucky on this. Again, the 22,000 is just the municipal portion of that next stretch of the highway of Front Street. Given that we were successful 2 years in a row on Front Street, I don't know that we'll be successful again, but if we put it in here sort of conditional on that if we are successful again with Front Street and Connecting Link, then we'll finish that last bit. And then we get to the ones that are not as connected to funding. So Leclerc Road is just pulverized and double surface treatment, and Riverfront we've talked about in council before.
No, Leclerc Road, sorry, that's actually the prices for asphalt. It's priced about.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go.
I can give an explanation to that.
Yeah. So Riverfront we've talked about here at council, and that was the one we had the whole discussion about how we were going to fix the drainage and how we were going to fix that. And so the pricing that they have here includes that sub-drain, rebuilding the road, and bringing Riverfront sort of up to standard on the fix there. We then have our granular resurfacing. We've got and usually, as you recall, that when we were doing granular resurfacing, it's because we've done brushing and ditching this year, and then granular resurfacing follows the following year. We do the brushing and ditching to get the drainage fixed, and then we go in with the granular resurfacing. So these are ones that you will have seen on this year's capital with the brushing and ditching, and we're now going ahead and doing the resurfacing. You'll see Dokey's Road there. The resurfacing is the second to last chunk of the Dokey's Road for resurfacing. We're almost through that, but again, that's the stuff that's sitting under the NORD's funding. As we just said, brushing and ditching is a significant part of the maintenance process in public works, and again, as part of that planning to what comes in next. And so these ones are kind of in the maintenance schedule. We do the brushing and ditching, and then they'll roll forward and be on a resurfacing schedule next year. Again, some of these ones we've actually been sort of doing in chunks. So Stewart Road is one we've been doing in chunks. Again, Dokey's, this is the last stretch of Dokey's for brushing and ditching, and that will have that whole 20 kilometers of Dokey's with the brushing and ditching done. And our roads needs study did sort of identify that the work that the municipality has been engaged in over the last number of years on fixing drainage has has made a difference already and will continue to make a difference on our rural roads as far as maintaining and increasing life expectancy on our rural roads. So then bridge repairs, and this is a big one here, and this is where, you know, if you look at what's included in the potential expenditures in 2025 on your reserve schedule to what's here, this is where the piece is missing. And so there are 3 bridges there. The Denonville Bridge at 1.5 million is one that I will let Ms. Henning speak to afterwards, just because of the concerns there. But the one it is there is a bridge that we are going to have to make a decision on if it's not one that Public Works actually recommends that we spend 1.5 million on. And so it's actually not sitting in your proposed expenditure on the reserve schedule. And so, you know, they can fund the work that they've got proposed here if we don't do the Denonville Bridge. If you want to do the Denonville Bridge, then we have some concerns about how we can actually fund all the work that Public Works has. So I'll just park that one for a sec, finish the last little bit, and then we'll come back to Denonville. So that's it is obviously a big cost, and bridges just are, you know, we did that bridge out in Laving not that long ago. We did one up in the River Valley a few years before that. Eugene Bridge just this past year. So bridges, yeah, they're an expensive investment. So patching is just patching that we sort of routinely do. The patching in Cache Bay, we do in conjunction with work usually that's done with water and sewer on doing the frost tapers and fixing some of those manholes and structures that are in Cache Bay. Some additional patching out on Muskasung Road. The street light, this is the one that we had the petition from last meeting. And then the last 2 items, you know, we've the relocating the RV and water dump station, that's to move from Corsall Road over to, not Floral, Bridge Street, thank you. Is to do that relocation of the RV water and dump stations and getting a system there that we can control. And the other is one, and I think it's been on the budget before, it's certainly sort of been kind of up in the air before, is a land purchase for a snow dump adjacent to our Public Works yard. We are leasing the land right now where we use a snow dump, and just whether there's an option to actually purchase the land as a snow dump. And so as you can see, it's just over 7 million, and you have this kind of 5.5 million actually on your reserve schedule of actual expenditures. But as you can see, when we come back to our schedule of reserves, that without the Denonville Bridge, they are pretty much using up everything that's here as far as infrastructure. You'll see a little balance left there on the NORDS funding, but again, that's because the NORDS funding has been provided to us kind of ahead of time. So the 2025 is the last installment we'll receive. We can use it the following year. We still have to finish that last stretch of Dokis Road for resurfacing, and we'll have a little bit left that can apply to Corsall or other roads that we've got going on. So again, you know, we've been fortunate in a few years that both the OCIF was a higher fund, and then during COVID, they issued a doubled up payment of gas tax, and then they had a surplus in gas tax, and they issued extra payments of gas tax. So we've kind of doubled up in gas tax twice in recent years, and so we've had these balances carrying forward. But again, as that money dries up, then we're back to looking at what we can sort of fund internally, and just the stabilization of both the gas tax and the OCIF, and certainly having you know, getting the OCIF returned to a more reasonable level would be a bonus if you know, we can get that one back up. And so that's where we are with Public Works. They have just one other little bit that's sitting in equipment, and that they have just sort of an IT replacement that we see each year, just sort of a amount just to replace laptops, desktops on a rotational basis across the staff. So that's what we have for Public Works. Sorry, did you want to speak, Denonville?
Yeah, I'll speak to the bridge. So
Before you do, is there another name for Denonville Road? Because I have checked on every map application and I cannot find a Denonville Road outside of Quebec. What's that?
In
I know,
River
but I
of
mean,
St.
no,
Joseph,
It's a laneway going off of St. Joseph Road.
Going to
Yeah, the
farmland.
River Valley people could show you. It's a road, it's a little laneway with a bridge leading to a farm.
It's got a lot of history
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
So it's a very large bridge. It's a large Bailey Bridge. It's actually almost, deck length is almost 40 meters. And it's currently servicing, did you find it? So it's currently only servicing 2 property owners. These properties they appear to be farmed. They don't contain any permanent dwellings. And so what's needed right now is replacement of the abutments. If we are not going to replace the abutments, then we are going to, we'd have to be closing this bridge. But replacing the abutments is going to be about $1.5 million, and we're still going to need to replace the bridge after this in the next like 5 to 10 years. So this would only be buying us a little bit of time. It's a huge amount of money to replace this bridge. I haven't even done an estimate on it, but a 40-meter bridge, I mean, that's the length that the Champlain Bridge is, and that's, I think, 25 to 30 million. So
It's a one lane.
yes, it is a 1 lane, so it wouldn't be the cost of the Champlain Bridge, but it would not be a small cost to replace this bridge. The fact that it's really not servicing any homes, it appears that there might even be access to these fields through one of the highways. I would recommend that we just close this bridge and not do any repairs on it.
Councillor Larrabee.
Okay. That road services farms, and I'm told there are cabins along the river there. Okay, and for the historical, that area, there are books that's written about that area of the lady that passed as a man was living in that area. So it's got a whole history for the town people there, okay? And you haven't heard about this story, and it's true. I met this lady, but it's a man. She worked in logging camps. It's her the name was Aoi. Only the doctor and the priest knew that it was a woman. She worked alongside of men and everything else. So yeah, there are books written about that area. And there is access used to be an access on past Ayut or the Tomogaby Bridge. That was an old access. Since the bridge was there, the farmer on Ayut Road built a sawmill. That's right in the access that farmland. And it would not be useful at all to the farmer that frequent or use that land for his cattle and for his hay. So it would be very, very destructive for the and he's one of the biggest, I think he is the biggest farmer in the area. Okay. And so I know it's not appealing to replace a bridge at that price, but I know this gentleman bought that property when the bridge was there. So he figured, like you have intentions that this is your access. And the government put that bridge there for a reason. It's those old army bridges, okay? And so I think this farmer would be left devastated if that bridge doesn't go back. And there's not only one, there's a couple of them. So we going to rebuild the road on the other side, which you'd probably see a cattle drive that you used to with horses to go around town to access the land, or he uses that to move his cattle back and forth. And also when he's doing hay, he's got to take his equipment, and since the bridge is narrow, he's got to raise his equipment up in the air, a tractor going backwards and a tractor going forward to move his equipment. So he does that because that's the extent that he needs that bridge. So even though it's a lot of money, it's still something that is needed.
Councilor Rivera. Oh, sorry, Mr. Barbeau, did you want to speak?
Well, not if there's going to be a debate, just, as a point of fact, though, that my understanding is that if we are going to do the bridge, given the reports on the condition of the bridge, it would need to be done. So then you would have to find, of the list that was just presented, $1.5 million deductions or increase your expenditures under Public Works to cover it. And that's, those are your options. So if you want to do the bridge, it's an additional $1.5 million that contemplated, or replacing some of the planned work.
So this is up for debate at this moment?
Well, I'd like to get some certainty as to get to an expenditure level.
Yeah, so just taking a look at, it seems like the obvious answer to me, like I understand where you're coming from, but it does seem like a bridge that we can afford to lose that way. And there still is access. It'll be more difficult for the gentleman, but seems like a easy answer. Or else, if we're looking at $200,000 at 1%, you're looking at an extra 7% taxes for a bridge that will need more money as well in the future. And this is a good way to lessen the burden on our taxpayers.
So there is still access to the properties that use that bridge currently?
I believe there is like a trail that goes through, yes.
Okay, but there's no other road or no other detour that gets to those properties, which are privately owned. I'm just trying to understand the impact to the property owners.
So I believe there is still access. I just don't think it's through a road. I think there's a trail access to the properties.
Through fields, yeah. Used to be in the old days, when they were doing logging. Okay, that's how that property got developed. And there was an old road, and that was considered the access to go back there. Then through time, the government put an army bridge there. It's quite the span. It's true. It's quite the
large bridge.
But if and the gentleman also told me that owns that property, Mr. Bull, said that his plans were to build himself a home there. Because at one time, like he tore that whole house that was on that land. It was one of the most beautiful homes that was around in that area. It was beautiful. Monsieur Poivenu that owned that. It was really nice. And that was his goal, his plan, is to rebuild himself a home there and retirement.
Councilor Gagné.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And for myself, I'll be honest, for using publicly funded money or taxpayers' money to fund a bridge that will be used for a parcel of land for a farmer. Unfortunately, the cost for me is too high. I would recommend that we condemn the bridge or use it at our own risk. And if the intended farmer really wants to use it, he can do the upkeep and use it at his own risk. And we'll save that 1.5 million to put somewhere else. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilor Pellerin.
Does the owner have a right of way to get to his property on the other side?
I couldn't answer you.
That would be a big question, because if he can't go to the other side, like he's locked, he's
Yeah,
not
I would
access.
assume not. I think that would have to be negotiated probably. So if it's historically, given the age of the bridge, Historically, it was probably not papered in terms of that kind of access on that trail. I'm guessing, Councillor Pellerin, but if I had to bet, I'd suggest not.
Does the bridge have still life in it for another year or two? What's the stamp on it?
The recommendation is that the abutments be replaced in the next 1 to 5 years.
1 to 5 years. So it's
So,
still-
well, and that was in 2022. So we are now at the abutments need to be replaced.
Councillor St. Louis?
Sorry, I wasn't sure what was done or anyone was done. Like, I also agree with the cost is extreme, and especially when you explain how he brings his machinery across with the tractor or 2 tractors lifting them. In my mind, this individual is taking very dangerous risks at this time, even doing that, knowing that the bridge is not safe. And I personally think that's what he's doing.
It's not, it's not.
I understand, but I mean, if the bridge is not safe though, that's me personally. I mean, he's taking some risk, which those risks will fall on us if something happens. Because if that bridge is not made to be carrying anything above, like you're saying that he's carrying, I mean, that's a liability on us. And I unfortunately also, and I'm looking at the Google Maps and I don't see any camps, any cottages or anything on the other side.
You're there, okay.
But anyways, so I just wanted to add that. In my opinion, I think the cost is too much. I'll show you after that, but I don't see any camps or cottages.
So
Right on the back.
if the majority of council seems to indicate that the 1.5 million isn't spent this year, and we have a 1 to 5, it doesn't necessarily mean definitively that the decision on closing it by bylaw needs to be made like tonight. It's just basically talking about expenditures for next year. So if there is a window of opportunity in some other area, I don't know what that would be, but the conversation we're having is about expenditure levels and what we can afford to do in 2025. And so if the council's wish is to not spend 1.5 million, given the information that you have before you, then obviously we won't be spending the 1.5 this year. We won't be budgeting for it. Having said that, if there's other research that we would be doing on rights of way or other options to assist the individuals, we certainly can look at that prior to making the decision, but probably getting a legal opinion on what our liability is for closing the bridge and use at your own risk and these kind of things. But the decision tonight is, do we spend 1.5 in capital in 2025 or not? And I think that, Madam Mayor, it seems like there isn't the appetite to spend that in 2025.
So just a show of hands who'd like to defer any discussion on this. Jamie, is that a question or is that a?
That is me continuing, that's me continuing my tradition of speed voting.
Early voting? Okay, sorry.
Well,
Just
Madam Mayor,
fine.
your question on deferring the discussion, it's really.
Not deferring the discussion, like deferring spending any money, kind of like pushing, so.
Not spending it.
Not,
this year.
okay. Who is in favor of not spending money on the Denonville Bridge this year? That's a vote, not a yes. Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
And so we'll roll ahead to community services.
No. Oh my goodness, like, yeah, we're gonna be in public works.
I was just being optimistic, folks, you know? It's not that easy. All right. I kind of forgot we hadn't talked about the rest.
Yeah, we talked about, can I start with a question on, can we start with Dokes Road?
No.
So you indicated in your presentation that the work on Dokes Road has been funded through NORDS. And NORDS is a specific program to facilitate access for resource development lands. What are the current resource development activities taking place within the municipality of West Nipissing along Dokeys Road?
Oh, I think we used the argument of the dam at the end, yeah.
That's not ours, though.
No, but it's access to it.
Okay.
It provided us that window, given the pressure.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
Certainly, you know, this was, I wouldn't say political, but, you know, it falls under we don't have a lot of residents there, but in honor of our partners, that the length of that road, we needed to find some way to make it passable.
And what was the funding amount on that, like percentage? Is it 50 or is it?
It's 100%, yeah.
What?
It's 100% funding.
Wonderful, good. And you said there was one other project on this list that is under NORDS funding as well?
So we're using the NORDS funding to fund the design work on Corsol in this year as well, with the access to Goulard lumber.
Okay, very good.
It's called
Very creative. I am liking that. Thank you very much.
Creativity.
Yeah. And the Corsol to Goulard will just go to the corner? Like from John Street to the corner of Corsol and Goulard Road?
We're going to look at both sections, but the design is primarily needed for Front Street to John Street because there's drainage issues there and sidewalk and.
Is there any infrastructure plan?
No, it would just be
That's just
storm sewer that there.
Thank you. And then I thought in some of our pre-discussions that we had talked about there had been council had a wish on the sidewalk, Corsol Road from John south to where Metro starts, like just after the complex. And I thought it was indicated that was going to be, that was a future project that would have design this year.
That would be a part of this design.
Okay, but
That's included.
it's only from Goulard to John. The sidewalk is
Sidewalk
John, is south of John, not north of John. Like, I'm just reading from the list here. So it says Corsol Road from Goulard to John.
Yes.
And the sidewalk that the council had asked about and had been approached by residents about is south of John Street towards Front Street.
John to Front.
Yeah, John to Front.
So, but that's not indicated in this document.
No, but that would be part of that design. That sidewalk would be part of that Corsol design from Front Street to John Street.
It's just not.
It doesn't say from Front Street to John Street. It says from Goulard to John Street.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying is that.
Oh.
And so we'll just
Okay.
It's just an error.
That should be
Okay.
Goulard to Front Street.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're gonna
so
look at-
if you can,
yes.
if you
We'll
can.
pay for
amend
that
so
problem.
that- And so the $60,000 is for the design of that whole, like all of Corsol
Yes.
from Goulard to
The
Front.
majority so from John to Goulard,
Mhm.
we don't really have drainage issues there. It's mostly just that section.
Okay,
But from John to Front Street, we've got drainage, we've got sidewalk, we've got a lot of design work that's going on. So the design that we need is primarily for there.
okay,
Which includes you.
okay, so yeah.
That will include the sidewalk.
That will be amended in the next document, because I'm sure we're gonna receive an amended document at some point. Thank you, Councilor Pellerin.
Yes, I got a couple of questions.
Yep.
Start with Leclerc. Asphalt or?
Yeah, so in your document, it does indicate double surface treatment, which is what that road currently is. However, the price is actually the price for asphalt. I did look at both options for Leclerc. And I'm recommending that we go with asphalt. If we do asphalt, we will hopefully get about 20 years out of that asphalt. If we do double surface treatment, we're likely only going to get 10 years. That's the last time I believe it was double surface treated was in 2012. So we're just a little over that lifespan right now, and we're currently spending a large amount to patch it. So asphalt will really, one, it's going to reduce our maintenance on that road because there is a lot of traffic. So asphalt would have a better life. We've actually done some boreholes because we were concerned about the base of the road, and we think that the base will be okay for taking the asphalt. And it's got quite a lot of traffic on it. So it will be better for all of that traffic. It'll hold up longer. And as we all know that the construction on that, because there is so much traffic, it would be nice to be able to get in there and leave it for a long period of time rather than having to come back and, 10 to 12 years to do it again.
What would be the price compared to spring?
So the price for a double service treatment?
Yeah.
So double service treatment would be approximately $930,000. So you're looking at a little over $600,000 in addition to do asphalt, and then more than double the lifespan. So
there's no work planned for where there was problem areas on that road? You think that the asphalt's going to take care of that?
Yeah. Yeah, we specifically went out and did boreholes at some of the problem locations. Well, right now, all problem locations are everywhere. But yeah, we've done some boreholes. We've looked at the base and feel the base will support the asphalt.
Okay. Eugene Road, I don't see that on here.
That's because that's part of this year's 2024's budget.
Okay.
So that's being advertised right now.
Great. One last thing, Sylvester Street in Vernon was
Yes.
on the road study.
Yes, and I do have it in my 5-year capital plan. I believe in 2027 or 2028, I have that on my list. Unfortunately, not for next year though.
Just to give me an idea, you've done, Dubois Street is right next door. You remember the price? It's the exact same length and everything, and it's too bad it wasn't maybe thought of at the time, because when a construction company like this moves, the big expense is the move. To get there and to leave and to add those workers for the day. And to me, it's too bad that we didn't look at that, because it's the last street to be done in Vernon. I went all the roads, and it's the last street that is a mess, and people have been after me.
And that is something that we are looking at in the future, is kind of doing a cluster of roads together, because you're right, there is a clear value when we can do that. So in my 5-year plan, you'll start to see clusters of a bunch of roads in Cache Bay or a bunch of roads in Vernon or that type of thing. Because there will be savings if we can cluster some of those roads.
Okay.
Councillor Rivard?
Thank you. So in regard to the design, I remember I know we spoke about it quickly yesterday, but there were some that were on there last year for design, and I guess they aren't ready for this year to be paved. Is that the case for some of these that we might see? Or is it typically a 2-year span, or is it you design 1 year and then the next year it kind of gets done?
It depends on the scope of the project. So sometimes it's 1 year. I think for everything that we have for design, next year, the intention would be to do the construction in 2026.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess they were smaller roads, so I was wondering. And then the other question, I know I've been asking this, it used to be Mr. Remyard that I would ask, but it's Ethel. I know we're doing from Market to Maine, so you're getting a bit of Ethel. Would that next portion from Maine to Nipissing be? I remember discussing that was going to get done, because that road is, it's probably the worst in town.
The intention is to continue to move.
But that's not planned?
Not for 2020, because there's water and sewer work involved in that as well. So it's quite a bit more expensive than just paving. So unfortunately, we're only able to do small sections at a time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ferrer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think you've answered my question, but I just wanted to check the sidewalk between John and Front down Coastal Road, then you, would it be probably done in 2026 then?
So no, that's designed for, yeah, oh, sorry, yes.
The
Design in
actual work-
2025, construction in 2026 is the goal, yes.
Okay. So we will discuss that aspect of the budget next year.
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any idea how much that would cost?
I have an approximate cost. That one. Yeah, we're looking at approximately between 750 and $1 million for that section.
Just for the sidewalk?
No, oh, sorry, no, not just for the sidewalk. That's for the storm sewer, the paving, the sidewalk, like the whole project.
But only John to Front? Or are you talking about the whole stretch?
No, that's all of Corso, from
All of
Front to
Corso.
Goulart.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Just going
Thank
back to the, thank you. I just have one question in between. I'm going back to the water main projects there. So King Market to Ethel and Ethel King to Nipissing has been approved under the 2024 budget. It's already bid and everything will be completed this. Yes. And then we're gonna hold off from Maine on Ethel until we can afford it.
Yes.
Yeah. Councilor Honey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a question in regards to the design only. Who does it? Because we're looking at 3 different designs. It's 170K just for designs. So I'm not educated and I don't know how it works. Is it architects or like who does the design and can't we clump them all together, like kind of one design bid for those 2? And is there a cost saving or like, I'm just curious. I just want to know how it works.
So we do clump some things together. Currently, some of the design work being done, we already have tendered. For example, the Church Street, the John Water Tower Loop, we have a firm already that's been working on sections of that for several years now. But when we do design, we put out a tender for design to different engineering firms and kind of an RFP.
Yeah, again, just several years ago now, through the water and sewer budget, they always have budgets they always have a design amount in their budget as well. That's to have shovel-ready projects when funding comes along. And so the municipality committed just over $200,000 actually on doing preliminary designs over a huge chunk of our kind of urban core in Sturgeon. And then as we've got the funding to do more detailed designs, we sort of have some of this preliminary, that's where Sandy was speaking about Church Street. We've got that preliminary done because we had a firm that did this overlay. So absolutely, when it makes sense, when there's areas that are contiguous or there's stuff that makes sense, then we do bundle it up. Sometimes it might be because of timing or the areas are too separate where we might not bundle it up, but certainly if we can look at we're overlaying a huge area, that is where we would see savings on it. And it would be through an RFP process for these level of projects, yeah.
So I'm just trying to think, can't we do those designs in-house? Because like the structure is there, the road is there, the piping is there. Like
there are some,
or some we do in-house.
We do some in-house.
Like externally and
resources, staffing. Yeah, we don't. It's a large undertaking to do these designs in-house. Like for example, Front Street, the work on Front Street, we did do that in-house. So we do them in-house, but we don't have the staffing to do everything in-house and the expertise to do all of it.
Larger municipalities usually farm that out. It's only when you get into very large municipalities that you're not doing the design. externally. That's extremely time consuming, architectural, as you say, and there's a lot more to it than that. So the fact that we have engineers in-house doesn't necessarily mean that that's their task to be engineers and design. They would be shut down and not be able to do their regular work. We have Al Carell and Liz that can do that, but for large scope, I don't know of any municipality that designs in-house. It's just too big.
Yeah, I do understand, but we're spending 170K. Could we hire a full-time resource to actually do it for 170K plus maybe more tasks?
Well, you're doing multiple designs too at the same time, right? And so a lot of that gets a little bit problematic. And then, yeah, we could look at that, Councillor Gagne, but typically, you know, when you're looking at a project, you're looking at a certain percentage of design and project management, and that kind of thing. And it's, you know, I deal with that, and I'm sure you're dealing that too, is that if you started to try to do it in-house, you'd get bogged down and you wouldn't be able to finish what you wanted to do. So I don't think we have the resources.
Yeah.
We were asking for project management to try and get more efficiencies there, but to say that the one designer could be doing it, and then there's a variety of different specialties too. Like we have bridge designers, there's road designers, you know, so there's the engineers are not engineers, even though they're civil, they also specialize. So
yeah, I understand a new development because it's all new. Like for that, I think the scope of work would be bigger, but we're kind of replacing what's already there. So I just thought maybe it would be easier to do it in-house, since technically I think maybe we have the plans if we had computers 60 years ago. But
to answer your question, we are trying to do as much in-house design as possible because we do recognize that it is very expensive and consulting fees are just going through the roof lately. So yes, when it is just replacement or simple things, we absolutely are working to do that stuff in-house. Like when you get into Coursel Road, for example, it's not just, you know, the road and the sidewalk. There's going to be storm drainage involved. There's curb involved. Like there's a fair bit, probably some parking along the park. So it's a fairly large design. So that's the kind of thing that we'd be benefiting from having a consultant do. But absolutely, when we're looking kind of at the, you know, where we talked about all these ditches that have been filled in and subdrain and that sort of thing, those types of things, which are changes. It's not just replacing that what's there. We are going to be looking at a lot more in-house design for that type of work.
okay. Just, I'm not a big fan of outsourcing when we can technically maybe like, if we can absorb it and pay the salary to like kind of, maybe that position would be a 3/4 field all the time doing design, but then we still have it for a quarter time to do other project management. So I'm just trying to wrap my head.
yeah, we are using Alan Corral that way.
Yeah, and I mean, that is part of when we look at that, like full-time employee that we're asking for, that is something that we would be looking at them doing as well. It is something that we are trying to move to as much in-house work as possible, but we will still always be reliant on consulting engineers for some things.
Yeah, I do understand. Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. What I'd like to do is call for a recess at this time. We are at 7:30. So I take a mover and seconder, and we will come back and continue our discussion on.
I had my hand up.
Okay, Councillor Larrabee, Councillor Gagne. Okay.
Seconded by Councillor Gagne. Be it resolved that at 7:33, a motion was tabled for a
7:34.
7:30.
I want every minute of that.
Motion was tabled for a 10-minute recess.
All in favor? Carrie, thank you. We need George and, where are George and friends? Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Reconvening, and we'll continue with our discussion on public works. I think your question was answered last, and Councillor Larrabee, you had your hand up first.
It's answered.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember.
Okay, I have one question under, on page 6, on the brushing and ditching. I have 2 projects there that are showing it's a 5 to 10 year. So why are they being included in this year's budget? We have Nipissing, Aubrey to Canal, and Levac Road, Highway 17 to Ritchie Road.
So the 5 to 10 year is for typically just the road surface condition. So the brushing and ditching, we do have a fair bit of growth on the sides of those roads.
Okay.
So that's why we're looking at that. So we want to be maintaining that.
And then, okay. And I'm sorry, the same on the asphalt though, on Dover Court from Sabran to Dufferin.
That one was a conditional on connecting link, so it's just if there's an opportunity to get connecting link, then we would use that opportunity.
Yep. And
Any questions, Councilor Howard?
Going on what Mr. Gagné was saying a while ago, in-house and all this, and along those lines, I'm looking at old Highway 17 bridge replaced substructure. I'm thinking of the bridge on the UG, like, you put it out, I guess, to a firm of engineers and whatever, and they design the bridge. What bugs me is that we almost paid $2 million for a bridge because we had put that aside in the budget last year, and it came back at $650,000 because the design was changed to a cheaper model, whatever, but it achieved the same thing. We crossed the same Little Creek. And to me, we could even have went cheaper by putting a box cement culvert, which MTO puts on the highway. So who decides that? How does it go?
so it depends how large the structure is. So Eugene, we went with a consulting firm for design there. This one on Old 17 is a fair bit smaller. It's a fairly small structure. So we actually are looking at just replacing that with some culverts because there's not the abutments and things that would be needed at Eugene.
So it's going to be replaced by a culvert.
Well, we have not determined that yet, but that's something we are
Okay.
looking at for that replacement.
Yeah, that would be great because I'm sure it would be way below 700,000. But back to Eugene Bridge, I want to know how this goes. That 1 year it's 2 million, and then the design was changed. Who here approves that? How does it go? I know if you go to engineer firm, they're not going to say we're going to put a culvert because they got no money in designing a culvert.
I think we've actually already discussed this, and we did look at, the engineer did look at culverts has options for Eugene and determined that because of the size there, that they were actually going to be more expensive than the structure that we put in place.
Okay. So what was the difference between the $2 million one and the 650,000 one? Why did this happen? Not just for future, for this one at 700,000.
I can talk just a little about procurement and what sometimes happens, and you're going to see this in our conversation about community services in a moment as well. So that when the design was initially produced for Eugene Road Bridge. And, and it's kind of reviewed by our staff, and we take it out to tender. And then it came back in at 2 million initially at tender, and we kind of went, eek. That wasn't in our budget for that year. We did kind of up the budget for the following year. But when you get that eek, because you've now tested the market, that's when you go back to your consultants and go, guys, you've got to give me something else. What else can we do? What are the other options? And what is here? And sometimes when you test the market, you get that feel for things as well. They did do a design that, again, as engineers, that they feel is the correct design for that location. And then we start to look at how creative we can get in finding a solution that fits a budget as opposed to finding a solution that is the preferred choice of solution.
Yeah, so to your point, Councillor Claret, and to both my colleagues to the right, your point is well taken with respect to engineering firms and what we're finding right now in architect firms and professional services. So, back in the day, we would rely on them, and we still do, right? But we're now looking at it a little bit more, given Eugene Bridge and other things as well. And as Ms. Craddock indicated, we have some cost forecasts that are in facilities that are blowing our mind right now too. So we're not prepared to just jump on them, and we're going to be doing some due diligence. But Eugene Bridge was a good catalyst to say, hey, let's keep one eye open. But, we're talking to Councillor Larrabee at the break and to Councillor St. Louis at the break, and what we spent out in Woolsey Bay, and and all of these massive designs and back and forth, we're having a look at that. So, but, we do have to rely on the cost estimates that we provide. And then when our feelings are that, no, that's not working, then we'll get back to it. But for budgeting reasons, we do our best estimates, and then sometimes they come in way over, and then we second guess it, and then they don't. But your point is well taken. How does that change? Yeah. How does that change is because we said we don't want that. And so we're forcing that more and more on our architects and our engineers to live within our means. But Eugene was a good catalyst for us.
Do we have somebody in-house that could design a bridge, like, let's say, Eugene Bridge, just out of curiosity? Or do we have somebody that could say, okay, no, here we can put a culvert? Because even on Piquette Road and North-South, little bridges. And it puzzles me, it could be all big culverts, which would last longer, and there would be no weight limit. That's what puzzles me.
Well, to Councillor Gagne's point, and to your point, it's something that we will have a look at with our resources that we have right now. But the resources that we have right now are, one is managing infrastructure, which is garbage, sewer, and water, and that. And so, to look at design, we don't have that in-house ability right now. And so the evolution is, if we have that more and more, we can look at in-house. As Ms. Henning has indicated, we are asking in our operations budget for an enhancement of a position that will be assisting us to look at things more closely like that. But right now, some of those designs, you can't look at them in a vacuum of just that one or that one or that one. Look at the list of everything we have here. That's a ton of stuff that we just don't have the capability of doing in-house right now. And if we had one, that doesn't mean they can do all of it either. So then we have to look at the, for an extra $120,000 or $130,000 position, does that eliminate all of the $200,000 or $300,000 of engineering work? No, it doesn't. So then we start looking at, it's only one person. So, these folks have teams of people that basically all come in and design that. But I'm not discounting your point, though, with respect to what the engineering firms are putting forward to us in the last few years. I think it might be due to liability as well. There's a real push now. There's a lot of lawsuits that are happening towards engineers that are stamping things. You talk about, it's a whole side conversation, but Elliott Lake, so engineering firms and their insurance and what they do, they tend to want to recommend Cadillac. And so that is to your point, and they do that to protect themselves. And we do need to protect ourselves too by having these things provided by engineers as well. But so we're going to have to find that dynamic, and that'll be an interesting discussion for next year. Like during next year, not at this time next year.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rivard.
Thank you, Judy. One, for the brushing and ditching, I noticed when I'm visiting lots of other municipalities, they're doing these large stretches of roads, their public works department. I know that we do some of it here, but these are all mostly like contract out numbers, right?
Yes.
So I was just wondering, there's no way that we can do more of it ourselves with our public works department and the machinery that we do have, the fleet that we pay for. And
Our brusher is running most of the summer, so yes, we are doing
So
capacity
whatever-
for what we can do in-house.
so whatever our brusher's doing isn't on this list.
Correct.
Okay. And then the other question that I had was just in relation to the bridge. When you mentioned the culvert replacement, so I went to look at last year's Levac Road budget for the culvert replacement was only about 100,000. So if we have 700,000 ready here, but it may be a culvert, we'd be looking at much less, right?
Well,
Or
for
this-
17, the depth of where that's being replaced is much deeper. So it's a whole different, you can't compare.
No, it is a very small bridge still, I know that.
Yeah, and I believe the budget for the Levac culvert, it ended up costing a lot more than what we had budgeted for it, so.
Okay, that was kind of what I was looking for there. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I put my own hand up again. I'll just ask a follow-up question on the brushing and ditching. So where it says resurfacing at the end, these are roads that are being brushed and ditched this year and will be on the granular for next year, or
So the
resurfacing for next year?
So yeah, the resurfacing is just sort of ties back to the roads needs study, but yes, in what we do is we do brushing ditching 1 year and then granular resurfacing following.
And for cases like East Road and Oak East Reserve Road that are geographically close to each other, do you tender those together, or are they tendered in separate jobs?
We tender all of our roads as individual roads. And so, but it does happen then that if a contractor is out in the area, they have less mobilization. So the contractor that's in the area tends to get the ones that are there, but they're awarded as individual roads.
And there's no value in kind of combining projects as larger projects and seeing whether there's, because one company could bid on one road and then bid on the other road and only get one of the two, but if they know that they're going to get, both jobs together, there might be a cost savings, like in what they're willing to bid on them. Just wondering.
On granular, it wouldn't make too much difference because they're all like.
Yeah, but on the brushing and ditching. I don't know, I just.
Well,
again, it's the mobilization cost, right?
And I believe we do see in our tenders, because we do put it out all as one tender, but then award has individual roads. And we will see where one contractor comes in and will bid on those two roads that are close together and not bid on anything else. So they are coming into that kind of more aggressively, usually hoping to get those two roads.
Anybody else with questions on Public Works? Councilor Kanye.
Just to follow up on the Councilor Rivard's, any brushing that you're doing internally, do we get a list of those projects in the upcoming, what Public Works is actually doing?
don't believe that's something that we've typically
We can give you an
provided, but we
operational
could.
report as to where they're brushing.
Yeah,
But they're not part of that,
Yeah,
not
'cause
part of capital, right?
Yeah, we know all of this, but
Yeah.
operation.
No, we can give you an operation.
Naturally.
And the other thing with some of the brushing contracts is we do lend some of our assistance on the ditching and that kind of thing, and we mobilize some of our trucks and that kind of thing. So there is some partnership that happens too, if I'm not mistaken, Nicholas.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least we'll know what capital is doing and what we're planning, which ditches are being planned for, from the side of things. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. For the land purchase, for the snow dump, where's the land, like, is this in Sturgeon Falls? Is this?
Behind the hotel.
Okay. Is there a reason why we can't continue to use Corsall Road? Because it's not for sale yet. You know, like, so can we put this off until we no longer have access to that property?
We ran into some problems with respect to the on Corsall Road, and so we had to move that, and we had moved that several years ago.
Sorry, I didn't hear you in regards to the
melting of all of the snow
Okay.
has salt, dirt,
Yeah.
yucky.
Yeah.
That's a technical term for not very nice. And so, so around there, it became problematic. And so we entered into an agreement with Harris Brar, or Harinder Brar, who is the person who developed that hotel, because they still own the land away, and we've been trying to negotiate that, but it's much more beneficial to us as well, and it doesn't create any issues with respect to collateral damage. Because it's dirty, eh? It's not clean.
And we don't own any other abutting property, like, I guess that's quite rocky there.
We've looked all over, Madam Mayor, and
Wasn't there at one point the old dump site on top of the hill?
yeah, it would just isn't feasible and is pretty far out of the way as well. And so it's
Of course.
What is that?
Yes, that Councilor Robart, sorry. Thank you.
So I know in our Economic Development Advisory Committee, we found out that the snow dump on Corsall Road triggered a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental assessment just because we dump snow. So I'd really want to make sure that this new snow dump, we won't have a use for it for I don't know how long.
No, it's a
very long time, because this is costing a lot of money.
It's a bush that is behind the hotel and between where Larche used to be. It's that bush in the back. And so we chose it for that reason.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. To me, I just feel like I wish we had known this, or whoever had made the decision back in the day.
Well, we're not blessed with, the future.
Yeah. So that's just why I want to make sure that there won't be any future development there, because that'll be a big cost.
Back in the day,
Future councils.
Back in the day, they used to put snow in the river, right?
Yeah, I know.
And we were told by MOE that wasn't a good idea either. That was about 25, 30 years ago, before my time in Sturgeon, but yeah.
We're always getting better at things, right? So, well, thanks for finding a better spot.
And what's the size of the property that's being contemplated?
I don't think so.
Yeah, about 5-10 acres. He owns all of the property that L's onto the highway as well, so he's allowing us to use that. But he was asking more than we were willing to pay. It's the issue.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll look at community services then, and so a little bit simpler up front as far as the sources of reserve. Community services does occasionally get application-based grants. You'll see that there is sort of potential grant revenue tied to a number of the project, but because it's application-based, it's not guaranteed. That's why you're not seeing it here as sort of the funding. I have put that column as potential grants in instead for it. Now, when you look across on the reserve schedule with community services, you do see a negative pop up there, and I'll talk about what's going on with that, because there are some things going on in community services. Community services is responsible for all of our facilities except for the public works and fire dedicated facility. So not just the recreational facilities, but all of our tenanted facilities and all those other facilities that we don't know where to belong. We just put them all in community services and they take care of everything for us. As council is well aware, because it's not the first time you've heard it and it's been part of your term plan and things like that, is we have a lot of facilities and facilities that are in need of attention. And this council has, sort of, made us take a look at the number of properties and take a look at what we're actually doing and sort of starting to move towards having plans on disposing of some of the properties and things like that so that we can focus on the facilities that are our core facilities or our critical facilities. We have ongoing, I'm going to start with the easy parts of community services. So their equipment and fleet is sort of that combination equipment and fleet. It really just means fleet. We treat this when we take fleet for public works. So if you look at page 7, again, they're just looking for a single light vehicle. We have a number of vehicles in community services. They do wear them, as you can see from the year, they wear them for as long as we can there. Our trucks are used because we have facilities all over and we're hauling lawn cutting equipment and trailers and things to various places and cutting grass up in River Valley and all over. So we do have a fleet and we're sort of on that. We should be actually replacing one a year almost is really what we're at with our fleet. There's just the one vehicle in fleet. We're going to skip the facilities because that's the hard part and just take a look at the equipment on page 10. And again, nothing big and fun like this year, but just replacement of lawnmowers. And as everyone else, they have sort of this IT sort of technology that just looks at a regular replacement schedule of hardware that is within the department. And so that is sort of sits as their proposed expenditure in 2025 under equipment and fleet. It's that amount there. And as you can see, they've got some reserve left over for that. The museum's reserve was set up way back in the day when the museum actually operated under a separate committee. And it's been quite a number of years that we sort of brought the museum more directly under the fold. And actually the community services reserve is sort of this a more general that applies to all of our facilities. The last major work we did at the museum was actually done as part of a package where we financed a lot of work that was done at a number of different facilities. We sort of encapsulated it into a financing package. So they have this little bit of reserve left, and that's okay because we've actually got some very specific work planned at the museum. So we'll use up the rest of that reserve, and then we're left with just community services facility to deal with all of our facilities. When you look at their facility schedule, and this is again, we've got sort of some recommended stuff here, some stuff that council has agreed that we've applied for applications, and so that if we get this applications approved, then we've got some funding committed, and then we have to commit to our end of things. There is a lot of work, and we talked in operating about sort of capturing a little bit higher amount in the professional fees so we can continue to work and keep working on planning for our facilities and going from our facility assessments and our sort of facility replacement or rehabilitation schedule to actually getting actionable items done. So, if you remember back, we've talked about the work that needs to happen at the Werner building and the level of expenditure there, the planning that needs to go in behind. So we're not seeing a lot of that there because that still is sort of encapsulated in that planning part that we've requested in operating so that we can have plans ready to move forward for future years. What you're seeing here is things that have got plans in place more or less with sort of one exception. So the first one there is the work at the recreation center. Now this is the one that had the funding under the sports, rec, culture and leisure funding that we submitted recently. And so we have sort of a base report and design done on that. We've got this application out in waiting for approval or not. Our director has heard that if we aren't approved for this, that NOHFC might look at it as well. So it is sitting there as a $2 million projected cost with potentially up to $1 million of funding. Chiller replacement is just, again, on our arena. And again, as you know, at end of life, and as you replace end of life, then we may see some cost savings. It just sort of prevents us having catastrophic failure. I believe Mr. Glenn has said that it's kind of a 1 to 2 year kind of lifespan left on that. We are, I think, past the end of useful life on that. But as you've heard from everybody, we can sometimes squeeze past these end of useful life periods, but it is one of these things that we can replace before we have catastrophic failure. Planned replacement is always better than emergency replacement. HVAC upgrades at the Sturgeon River House Museum. As a museum, it actually has some really interesting HVAC systems because of needing to keep climate control and keep things different in different areas and heat and cool and all the rest. It is one of those things where we actually have had failure, and we don't have air conditioning possibility at the museum now. It has impacted operations. The furnaces are tied to it. We have a number of furnaces there. It certainly will start to impact operations by next summer. It is the facility that's most used for weddings and gatherings and rentals and all that kind of stuff. It outperforms our other remote facilities, and I think it's actually outperforming Marcel Noel Hall right now. Yeah. Yeah. So again, and it's not a significant investment, just the 50,000. We have the reserve for museum, and certainly it just means again that we can preserve our artifacts that are there, continue to make the building available during the summer, and make our staff more comfortable in the winter. Wharf replacement is one that kind of caught up on us, and this is the discussion about our first thought versus what might be happening. It's in here on your list of schedules. It's not included on the reserve, and Mr. Barber will speak to that a bit later. But this is one where we have just received a number. We haven't had those discussions that we were just talking about, Councillor Pellerin, but we've put it out in front of council so the council is aware of what the scope might be, and then I'll circle back to it and let Mr. Barbo talk about kind of what it looks like and what options and things like that are there. Boulard Park, the baseball field, again, this is one where we've made an application for the Field of Dreams. So the application is in process. If we're successful in the application, then there's $292,000 worth of grant, and the offset is municipal contribution. And then we have AODA upgrades at 2 of our facilities, sort of on the schedule for next year. And so again, our facility manager is sort of working away at our facilities and kind of ticking off the boxes on AODA issues across our facilities. And again, it's one of these things that we're biting off in chunks, because just to sort of get caught up, but we're biting off in chunks to sort of move these facilities along. And so looking at, again, the museum and North Manettville. Before we go back, I'll just take a look at what it looks like then and why it looks this way on when we're looking at our reserve schedules. When you look at the facility line at the reserve, it contemplates what's on here except for the wharf replacement in the proposed expenditures, and it includes the potential grant. And you can see that we end up in a negative balance there, and which means that right now, without other sources of financing, and financing is an option, we can't do all the work that's listed here. Now, included in the projected expenditures for the end of 2024, the project that we did not go ahead with at the Verner facility was about $300,000. A little bit of that budget got spent because of some of the consulting fees that have already occurred. So I've, however, sort of just parked that amount for future things that happen at Verner. Now, if council says, yeah, actually, no, we don't want to hold that amount, then there's about $300,000, and it comes down to just a sort of a $200,000 or a 272 sort of deficiency, which is sort of just one project coming off. But again, if we're looking at doing all of this work, then we can't do all of this work without other sources of financing. And I haven't gone and looked at other sources of financing or done any of that stuff because we haven't had those discussions at council. If you look ahead to your last page in the book, community services is the one that ended up wearing a lot of those other things that council had asked about. As Ms. Henning said, some of the work that council had asked Public Works is already in 5-year plans or was part of the planning for this stage and things like that. And so there were some new asks that came from councillors in getting ready for budgets. And so here's some of the new asks with some projected costs. So this is not included anywhere in the reserve structure right now, but just, so you can take a look at what some of those potential things were. And again, whether council wants to go ahead, whether council wants to invest in new structures with the other, knowing some of these other things that are coming along. And then we will start talking about other options on how we would deal with things. But they are there for council to take a look at what the potential costs are. Do you have more to say about the wharfs and marina then?
Well, just in general, so it's disheartening for us and probably, for all of us in the room in looking at the infrastructure deficit and trying to keep what we have and rehabilitate what we have. I've made these comments for the last few years. It's not about this council, for many years, and council has always wanted to go down to the bottom line and bear a minimum of own source revenues, and we're paying a price. So there's a lot of cool legacy projects that this council wants to start. Some of it we're going to get done. Hopefully, Field of Dreams. And other things. We have continuation of projects such as the field covered rink, which we're able to come to fruition even though it was started 5-6 years ago. But these projects take a lot of time. The community services total budget right now is already taken with respect to what was committed by council. Through, if we get those grants, which is a good idea to leverage money, we will have spent around 1.5 million between that and Field of Dreams. And Field of Dreams is an enhancement and not a refurbishment. Well, it might be a refurbishment, but it really is taking you down towards a project and an enhancement. So then the dilemma is, where do you find we're racking our heads because we know that we just don't have enough money in any of our departments, quite frankly, to basically satisfy some of the ongoing needs. And then you look at, the Minnehaha Bay, which for me, that didn't seem like too long ago. 2007, I believe, was phase 1 of Minnehaha. 2007, 2008, when the government threw a lot of money at us with the financial crisis, and so everybody was giving infrastructure money. So we're able to get $12 million done for around $3 million. And phase 1 was these boardwalk, and what they did with the boardwalk, in the scope, is that they basically replaced the boardwalk but didn't do anything to the cribbing underneath. And so that cribbing is very old. Like those of you who are historians here, Ted Doucette, they owned a marina back there. You probably remember that. Those who live here.
I work for him.
Right. So, so if you can imagine, and that was all federal government wharf and dock, and that the municipalities took over. And then we got this money and had this great project, but they didn't actually fix the bottom of it. And so now here we are having to fix the bottom of it, and we're at these engineering reports where you got to do it like yesterday. And so, arguing all day today with Steph, and Steph talking with his people and that kind of thing. We thought it was 2 million and we were going to do it in phases. Now it's 4.2 million, and they're recommending a cement that'll be good for everything. I was just going, yeah, it's just a lot of noise. So we're, to your point, going, we got to have a look at this more closely. So some of what we agreed to, and I think there was a discussion yesterday with respect to the effective use of debt. I think we're at the point where we're going to be coming back, and this isn't part of the budget exercise, but with some of your legacy projects and other projects that we can combine into a program to kickstart our assets And my planning or discussions with staff would be, we would be coming to you probably in early February with a proposal to check off a lot of these boxes to get them forward, moving forward. Because quite frankly, there isn't the amount of money that is needed without starting to raise taxes. Our grants are pretty good from the government, actually. A lot of municipalities don't get the same OMPF levels, and I don't like using acronyms. That's the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. So it really is going to be incumbent upon us to look at and continue to look at things in a strategic way, and to continue to lay the base down to try and get these things off and leave even a legacy of consistency. Council is looking at rationalizing some assets now, and so that's good. And we want to continue to do that so that we can reinvest in where you want to put that money. And so we have in that fund right now about 900 in the land sales fund. What do we have?
Over a million, so it was 116. Yeah, just about 850.
Not a good guess. And so, these things we'll be able to use for redevelopment, and then it'll be council's decision as to how you want to use that for redevelopment. Obviously, a staff's recommendation is that if you're planning on keeping buildings, you got to maintain them and you got to keep them going. So, if you want to keep the buildings that you have, you got to spend the money into them, and that costs a lot of money. We have a problem in Verner that's already been articulated to you. Some of our other community centers are old schools as well that are just in horrible shape. And what are we going to do about that? We can have really cool projects in every community. It's just where to fund them. And so we're going to be looking at debt and finding, if the interest rates are lower, we'll look at Infrastructure Ontario or other methods to see what we can do with respect to trying to use debt in a manageable way in order to kickstart some of these capital assets. So as it is right now, I believe we have the room to do what you already committed to Dreams and the AODA elevator modernization, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then looking at what were the other ones, Elisa?
The chiller and the AODA upgrades that.
Yeah. So those we can cover this year and, move on that. If we don't get those grants, we would be coming back to you also mid-year and saying if you want to adjust a few things, we might be able to pull off other things. But unfortunately, I hate to burst your bubble, but what are you going to do? So.
Councilor Rebar.
So you mentioned there's about 850 in that land. I forget the name of our fund for it. Just land fund.
Yeah.
Land. Work for now.
Yep.
So that would be enough to cover the shortfall to at least take care of the chiller replacement and the AODA and still have some within that fund, right? For future or whatever council would wish to. That way the entire checklist would be pretty much taken care of. I just wanted to put that out there that there'd still be about 320,000. At least the way I see it is at least what we're selling is coming back into the community, tangible assets, right? Something that people can enjoy or continue to enjoy the Verner rink and not have to replace something when it collapses right in playoff season or something like that. And next thing you know, we can't even rent the ice and we lose all that revenue there as well. And the AODA, I don't have much information on that, so I won't speak too much on that. Just to start the conversation.
Councilor Larrabee?
Yeah, just a comment that you made, Mayor, about the mini AHA's setup there. Wouldn't there be a responsibility for the engineers of the day? That project's not 20 years old. Like,
Well, there were no,
somebody dropped the ball somewhere.
not necessarily. It was designed with the idea that it was replacing that, but they weren't guaranteeing an absolute life. So, and then what we did here also in the facilities assessment reports is that they didn't even necessarily see that. So you have to go down. There were scuba divers and all of that. The way that I think came about, correct me if I'm wrong, was some of the degradation that was happening on where the pumps were, and we started to see some of the some failures, and then that led to the hip bones connected to it. And so, yeah, no, to answer your question, no, there would be no liability on the designers. There might be some liability on, I have to watch what I'm saying because I don't know that there is, but this was done as almost a 3P kind of thing, if you recall, or for those of you who recall. And originally there was a local company in economic development who decided to partner with the municipality to basically do this this vision, the economic development, they used to call it an authority back in the day. And they created this vision, and it took a life of its own, quite frankly, and started moving. And so at the end of the day, certain things fell, there was even some issues with the integrity of the land in the back, and that was controversial. So it was really damn the torpedoes, and they were moving forward on this thing, even to the degree that the design of the building for a restaurant was absolutely inadequate. And so we had to make some changes, and that's why we divided the building in two, because it really wasn't sustainable as a restaurant in its form. So yeah, it was done to maximize money, to kickstart the community. It's a great asset. But it's now 15 years old or 16 years old.
We've got to throw 4 million in.
Yeah, but I'm not 100% sure, and I'm not an architect or an engineer, but we want to have, and Liz is involved, Alan, Donnie, and really want to look at what they're proposing and what we can do differently and how we can phase this differently. So it's certainly not on our schedule to say, please give us 4.2 million this year.
I'll just ask a follow-up question while we're on that building. The structural issues on the wharf, do they affect the road or the permanent infrastructure such as the building, or is
No.
it the boat slips?
It's just the cribbing underneath, so it would be load posted. Right now, we should be putting signs as well, so we shouldn't be driving on the boardwalk. We should watch, special.
Are you talking about the road in front of Twiggs?
No, it's the boardwalk. It's the boardwalk.
Boardwalk?
So the boardwalk itself, all of that span to fix it, they've got a quote for 4.2, and that's creating the same reaction as we do. Yeah.
Okay, because so it wouldn't impact the operation of the building. Like doing nothing would not impact the operation of the building. What it would impact, what it would impact is only the lost revenue from the boat slips. And what's the annual revenue on the boat slips?
Well, potentially not even that. If you're going there, potentially
I
not
just
even
think
that. So if you're walking and holding hands or not holding hands or walking your dog and all of that, that when you're walking on that boardwalk, what is underneath the boardwalk is suspect, to say the least, is degraded and rotten, some of the wood. And so that boardwalk is what is the problem. Obviously, the paved road is on solid ground, and the docks that go down to that, obviously, if it was limited to a 15-foot span to get to a boat, that wouldn't be necessarily the issue. The issue is to replace the boardwalk in its in the same state or close to the same design as it is now. So from the gas pumps all the way to the boat launch.
Thank you. So that's a lot of money for a dock.
And that's why we're not recommending.
Okay. I'll ask another question in regards to projects such as the chiller replacement or looking at the kind of phase one items on Goulart Park redevelopment. Has there been thought put into applying for Trillium funding on either of those? Because there is a new intake that begins in February with a deadline of March for applications for capital grants under Trillium.
Well, obviously, we're looking at any funding grants in December or November of 2024. We have to put what we know in front of you. But certainly, if there's some grants that enhance the ability of us to accelerate some of those projects as we come forward with opportunities, certainly we'll bring those forward. But as a budget exercise, we can't factor in and hope.
Along that line, I believe the director said that NOHFC may entertain 2 projects from us if we, but again, it's that council determining kind of strategically which are the projects we want to focus on. So again, if we're not successful in the Sports, Rec, and Culture fund, is NOHFC the answer then for the work at the complex? And if we're parking the wharfs because we don't know what's, that $4 million is a lot. Is there a second project? But it's that being strategic in what we apply for so that, if we only have one project, only have 2 projects with NOHFC, what are they going to be? And right now, sort of waiting on what happens with that Sports, Rec, and Culture, whether we need NOHFC there. I think it's sort of where the department is recommending.
Yeah, and so we'll bring that back. But this cost estimate for Minnehaha Bay came to us last Thursday, I believe. So it's hot off the press.
And what are the specific AODA deficiencies at the rec center?
Steph can speak to that. I believe it's doors.
So when you undertake any major retrofit, you have to then be compliant for all the AODA Act and all the building code. So if we're going to address access to the building, change rooms, elevator, once we get in and start doing retrofitting or renovations, then we have to meet the code, and we certainly have space there that is not up to AODA standards, and so we'd have to address that.
And when the AODA was first brought out in 2005, there was a deadline put on for compliance for 2025 as the government of Ontario changed its stance on that?
To my knowledge, no, but we submit our compliance report every year. And
compliance, sort of with facilities that we have, it wasn't that all facilities had to have push button doors by 2025. The accessibility, again, on retrofits, the accessibility on things as far as what you now do when you replace playgrounds, but we didn't have to go and replace all of our playgrounds, just as you replace playgrounds. And so the Accessibility Act allows for on buildings, well, not this when we do have automatic doors, it allows for the fact that someone can open a door for someone else, in an existing facility. So it wasn't a forced deadline on replacing doors across everywhere. But there were things like, the website stuff, the customer service training, the making documents available, all of that, did have deadlines that we've already passed and met. Yeah.
I guess my concern is more for some of our recreational and public facing facilities that may be deficient as far as washrooms or other things like that. Like, so, because there are, like you say, somebody can open the door for somebody, but there are other parts of accessibility, which I think are a little bit more critical, and in order to serve, especially when you look at our demographic, like are all of the bathrooms in all of our facilities wheelchair accessible?
I would say that all of our washrooms are not up to AODA standards.
Okay.
And so we look at, often when we look at applying for funding, for example, initially under the sports and recreation facility program that came out, initially, we looked at the entire complex, the arena, the Marcel Noël Hall, and the pool side. And then once we got an initial estimate, we realized that the fund was capped at $1 million, and we would had to have put in a $4 million application. So we kind of scaled it back to concentrate on the pool. But if we would have had the ability to include the entire facility, then all the washrooms would have been retrofitted to AODA standards, including in the arena as well. So that will have to be pushed back to a later date when we come up with budgets to be able to do that. And that goes for other facilities, whether it's the Cache Bay Community Center. But when we undertake renovations, we do have to meet those standards.
I understand in order to maximize the funding opportunity for the Sturgeon Falls Recreation Center project, that there was a must-have list and then, you know, extras in order to maximize. So has that been broken out so if the funding is not available, what's the work that needs to be done immediately? Is there work that needs to be done immediately on that facility? So if the funding application is not successful, is it still a $2 million project, or do we take items off?
So to that point, potentially, to your question, but what Ms. Craddock has indicated is we have had some verbal discussion that MNDM and NOHFC could consider it. So that the funding potential is not.
And on the AODA upgrades for North Manettville and for Sturgeon River Falls Museum, what's the work contemplated there?
Essentially looking at getting automated doors for the main entrances. And that's the key to AODA Act, is to at least provide the entry points to facilities as a starting point, and then to work your way through the building.
And there have been other deficiencies noted in the North Manettville Community Center by the volunteers there. And I wonder if within either the maintenance budget, like are there plans to address some of those issues within the maintenance, the operating budget?
There are. We did this year. We did some of the work in that facility, and it is our intent to continue on looking at making upgrades to that facility through the repairs and maintenance budget under operations. However, we are going to work with the committee in North Manettville to address some of their concerns pertaining to the commercial kitchen there. There's certain issues that might not be easily addressed, and not for this year, but we will work with them to see what can be done.
Because they currently have no exhaust hood and no fire suppression system. Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Gagne?
Yes. So for the AODA upgrades from North Manettville and the museum, those are automatic doors that are actually being put in there at the cost of $225?
Correct, for both.
Inflation is really hurting us, I guess.
Doesn't make any sense. And there's also work to be done to make sure it's a level so that wheelchair access and whatnot.
There's no grant for that, like it's mandated by the province, but
there's and to that point, Councillor Gagne, you'll notice often that they'll come up with granting programs and they'll exclude AODA work. It's on the onus of the business owners and the public sector to basically come up with solutions to meet AODA standards. And there are very little to few grants that will provide funding specifically for that.
And to that question, isn't there any grants for museum?
Again, very little. Through the Ontario Museum Association, we always keep an eye on that. There used to be a CMOG grant, but it was more for operations. As far as infrastructure for museums, it's treated as any other recreation facility. In most cases, we could access grants through the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund for building upgrades, and we have in the past. However, there aren't any very specific programs that cater to museums.
Okay, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Larrabee?
I found that in River Valley, we did some work. We applied for a grant onto the New Horizon, and we replaced the two doors, automatic doors, and also built some storage areas and like that to the tune of 25,000, and that's through the federal government. Maybe some could fit in that.
I don't know that we qualify for the same thing as the center. We don't have necessarily access. Some are very specific towards not and not municipalities. But we'll have a look at that for sure.
Councillor Pellerin?
As you were talking about accessibility and all this, the committee went around, which I'm on, we went around at every facility in West Nipissing, and there is a list of documents, which is all listed in front. Yeah. So.
Are the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee shared with council and agenda packages? Take a look at that. See if we can find that, because that would be interesting to just to take a look.
One more thing, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I see that the Werner building is not in there. I guess it's not urgent. That building is not, it's not falling down. Okay, so it's not a big rush right now, because I'd like to come back to it because I know it's a big price, but going back to the Museum Bridge, you know what I mean?
So, right. So on that, in my comments as well, that's one of the projects. I apologize, Councilor Talleray. That's one of the projects that we're also looking at, and there are a variety, or there's a few options that we're looking at. Potentially, are we putting good money after bad on that one? Should we be consolidating, having a brand new center that we can fund or and go forward with, combining it with the arena? And so we've got some costing, some preliminary costing on those things. We also have some costing then perhaps on repurposing that for either multi-res or for other development. I know that there are some developers that look at specifically those kind of things. So what we plan on doing is bringing this forward for a council discussion with some options. And I think that the solution could potentially be very beneficial to the community of Verner in terms of revitalization and new infrastructure, as opposed to knocking down an old gym and death by 1,000 cuts, I guess. So we're having a look at that and what's in the best interest for the users, for Verner itself, and and so we're looking at that. So that's part of what we'd like to bring back early in the new year, with the ability and some recommendations as to how to fund it.
Okay, good, because there's quite a few tenants in there, like you're talking about. L'Union culturelle des femmes franco-ontariennes, Dr. Bourgo Library, the exercise room, Mafra, and there's still room. There's still, I think, 2 classrooms empty.
Right.
So the potential is there. Anyway, I think that because we've been talking to quite a few people in town there, and they're all surprised that this building it's solid. It might need some.
I don't want to. It might not be as solid as you.
We can talk. Okay.
Councilor Larrabee?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We discussed a while, not too long ago, but about the transfer an RV transfer station from here in Sturgeon. I guess it's council's discussion we had for the River Valley one because it was taken out. I would be interested in having some literature on this, why it was taken out, and also if it could be put, if there's an estimate that could be put together on what it would cost to replace it.
Sure, I think you can make an agenda request for the RV station in River Valley, and we can provide you with the update and the decision points as to what led to it.
Okay, I guess this is not the time for the wish list?
Well, I don't know how you want to fund your wish list. We did provide and ask council about a month ago, and the mayor received an amalgam or a list from folks, and they were provided to us. So.
Oh, okay, Mayor, I was just told that there was gonna be, get your wish list ready, and I got it on my wish list, but I was never told to bring it to.
No, must have misunderstood. But again, if you want to share those ideas with us, we can have a look at it. But as I indicated, in order to add a wish list or enhancements to our infrastructure, while trying to refurbish our existing infrastructure, there'll be a challenge. And the challenge is one of resources, size of project, and timing. I understand Councillor Fadin also has $60,000, the dock out at the end or around St. Jean Road. So there's a lot of those things that we're hoping to cluster that we just don't have the money in this budget for. But we're looking at seeing what we can do in terms of a cluster of financing to see what we can do and check off a lot of boxes to make next year's deliberations a lot easier.
Okay, I'll definitely be putting a request item for the next meeting of this
Which one?
RV.
Yeah. So,
Definitely.
probably for I don't know about the next meeting, which is on the 16th or
So
so.
because it's very important, it needs so probably you need to go in reserve if it's allowed by the council, because you're gonna have an environmental impact on this.
I won't
And
debate.
there was an understanding also, but anyways, we'll get into
I saw Councillor St. Louis first. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a few questions, or first and foremost, I'm not sure. So from what we started, the 6.25, what is it in here, or where am I looking to that it brings us to the 6.25, right? So is it all of these projected costs that brings us to the 6.25? Because does that include the 4.3 million?
No.
Okay.
No, 6.25%. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
yeah.
That is the deficit or the gap in a 6.52, but.
Okay. I tried.
That is the gap between what is before you as an initial budget with some assumptions, but that is the gap between the money we have presently available and the expenditures that we have. The gap is 6.52. The assumption with public or with our capital is that in your budget line item, I believe you had about 1.2 million for facilities only, or 1.3, and then we had some in reserve, so we're scheduled to spend around 1.4, 1.5. So that's all. So
Okay.
that's why I'm saying is that for the money of this, even the 6.5, that's the capital level. Now, we haven't discussed getting that 6.5 down, but I would strongly never recommend reducing your capital outlay per year, because that's what people see. If you want to reduce the general levy increase, then we would be looking at it in a variety of creative ways this year in order to get to an acceptable level. But we're not there at that discussion yet.
Okay, no, then that makes more, I was just looking at it, and I'm like, well, hold on, you know.
That'd be about 27%.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, my second comment, Madam Mayor, I understand what Councillor Rivard spoke about earlier about using some of that land fund, whatever. Personally, and I think I've made it very clear in the past, I would like to see some of that fund put towards an asphalt court, or whether it's basketball or pickleball court in Cache Bay. I've mentioned it before, we went from a 10-month facility to approximately a 3-month facility now that we're going to be using, that we lost. I find the cost fairly high, but I did have a conversation with Mr. Poulin. He did explain to me how that cost came about. However, I also think that I'm wondering if it can be done in stages, in the sense that if we're going to tackle the Goulart Park and remove the fencing around the Goulart Park, well, that fencing could probably be reused at that portion in Cache Bay. There's fencing at this old ball field in Cache Bay that could probably be used to surround that. And as for the lighting, you know, if by the time the project's done, whenever it would be done, then the lighting isn't really necessary immediately, and it's something that, you know, for myself and the people from our community, we can look at fundraising, blah, 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 and so on and so forth, right? Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. So if, as a separate discussion that doesn't affect the expenditure levels due to taxation, if you want to have a discussion, Madam Mayor and Council, with respect to the sale of land fund and what you want to do with it next year, we can put that on an agenda, because there could be a lot of competing interest with that. You make that point, and I certainly support you in Cache Bay, and others make that point, and I certainly support you in Werner, and support, you know what I mean? So I think that will be a council discussion, that do you want to use it? And if so, how much and what, right? But I'm not sure it necessarily needs to form part of the budget deliberation. What we want to get as part of the budget deliberation, and it needs to be done soon, is we want to get to an acceptable expenditure level, and with some of the assumptions built in, so that we can start tendering out some of the projects for competitive bidding, right? And so if we can park the other stuff and know that this is coming on future agendas, that's fine.
And, sorry, Madam Mayor, and I do have something else. I agree 100%. The only reason I brought it up is because it was brought up earlier to use it for our.
Absolutely.
So that's the only reason I brought it up. My last question, and it's, I don't know if I'm reading this wrong. It's under community services lawnmower, $40,000. Is that like lawn tractors? Okay, because that's 80 lawnmowers at $500 a mower. I don't think we need 80. Okay, so it's lawn tractors or stuff like that.
72-inch.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm good at that. That's it for now.
The last thing I forgot a while ago was about if it could be possible to get maybe a list of the municipal building and efficiencies in it, and what the report came back with.
I believe I actually requested that last time, first buildings, burner for Cache Bay.
I believe we did provide council with the executive summary of that, and all the buildings are listed and the costs are provided for, and they gave us a 10-year a list of deficiencies or repairs for the next 10 years. Or for I guess the report was done in 2022. I believe council has that.
We can resubmit it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the executive summary is different than the detailed.
I know what you mean, but yeah, I'd like to
details
know
are
what's
for
wrong with the building. That's what I'd like to know.
For which with?
The building in Werner.
Well, we can give you the list of the building condition assessment done by engineers for all of our facilities.
Yeah, whatever.
And,
But
and the consultants, what they do is they prioritize the work that needs to be done in all buildings that we own by high, medium, and low. And then they give us an assessed value of what that work might cost. But that was done back in 2020, 2021. So you have to use accelerators to determine in today's cost what that will mean. But we have that done for all the facilities.
I know what you mean, you're talking about the total cost. I'm asking, what did they find wrong with the building?
Oh, we have that detail.
That's what I want.
And that was provided to us 2 years ago, so it's probably be more than what they initially quoted us for.
Maybe the price, but the actual physical problem with the building, that's what I like.
Well,
That's what I'd like to know.
from the roof to the outside cladding, to the windows, to the washroom upgrades, to the boiler systems, to.
Whatever they found.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
Councillor Lanier?
Just to that report in regards to our building assessment that was made. It's good that we do have that, but did you guys go through it and kind of prioritize? And is it your plan to come back to council and say, we've got 30 buildings, we need to sell 12 because it's going to cost us too much to upgrade them? And these are the ones that are worth kind of saving? Has that been done?
I think I'd word it different. I think I'd word it differently. I think we're going to tell you, we're going to tell council we need 3 million a year for the next 10 years in capital, or 4 million a year to cover the work that needs to be done, and then council can decide if you want to sell buildings.
I would be really loath at a staff level to recommend to you what building to close. That's really a council decision, once you get the facts of that. If you want, in my opinion, there'd be a lot of buildings that I don't think that we have the use and we can reinvest, but I think that's an elected official job.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but we still need the data in regards to, it's not being used, it's underutilized, it's not being used 50% of the time. And at that point, it can come back to councilors and that elected official will make the difficult call, and people won't be happy, but it is what it is.
We'd be happy to bring that. We've been very careful, and we've been, bringing things to you like, Scouts Island, and then all of a sudden you see, oh my God, so yeah, we can hammer you with that kind of stuff, and then you can deal with your electorate, because
I would
everything
appreciate
is
that.
not important until it becomes important when you start saying you don't want it anymore.
Yeah, I know. I would appreciate to at least have a look at what can be done. And sorry, I just wanted to make one more comment, and no disrespect to you, Mr. St. Louis, but when we're talking about basketball courts, I think we should talk basketball courts in every area in West Nipissing. So not just Cache Bay. So if Vernon wants one, they get one, and let's look at building 10 of them. If we need 10 or 6, and maybe if we do them all at the same time, it's probably going to be cheaper to get a contractor to come in and do it. So I just want to make sure that we're not, I never talk about just Ward 3. Everybody should benefit from everything. Just want to make it clear that I think if we do need basketball courts, why don't we build some where we actually need some, most of it? So I just wanted to make that.
I think Councillor, no, can I defend you? Okay, in Councillor St. Louis' defense, in Sturgeon Falls, in River Valley, in Verner, there are all public schoolyards that generally have basketball courts that are open and available to the public. When the rink at Cache Bay was rebuilt, it was an asphalt surface, so in the summer it was being used. So in the rebuilding, they actually lost that type of asset, where here you can go to St. Joseph School, you can go to wherever, and for most other places, field accepted, although they have a beautiful outdoor rink, so we're not going to get into that. But Cache Bay actually lost a facility in the transition to the new rink construction, and so I think Cache Bay is one of the areas that actually doesn't have basketball courts that are publicly accessible.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, like, Levain doesn't have one, Northern Evelyn doesn't have one, so I just want to make sure that if we look at it, where are the needs, and let's hit them all at the same time. We'll save money if we build more than one at the same time.
And trust me, you're not offending me by no means. I understand your point. However, it's exactly what Madam Mayor said. Everybody else has access to a concrete pad. I'm not even going to specify basketball court. I could care less if it's basketball. Not everybody, River Valley does. At the school. I went there. It's a beautiful basketball court right beside the school. So everybody has a concrete pad of some sort or basketball that they have, and that's what we lost. We had it when we were kids at the school in Cache Bay. Unfortunately, if you look back there, it's all broken. There's nothing left. It's all grass. Everything is grown in. It would be great to have it behind the school, to be honest with you. That way you have the splash, right beside the splash pad, but we have the splash pad there. My apologies, Mr. Moore, I know I'm off topic.
We will,
and it is not-
yeah, we will speak about that at a future meeting when we discuss that, the reserve. That being said, it's 8:59, so, Councillor, Mr. Warbo.
So I think you've been through 99% of issues, and I'm not trying to shove things down your throat. You know, you're going to be getting, we're going to be providing strategies to try and make up the funding shortfalls in some of your legacy projects. My view of things is that if you have 3 hours after having received all of this deliberation, I'm not 100% sure Saturday is necessary. I think you can do December 2nd and get to an acceptable level. That's up to council, but in my opinion, the discussion right now is expenditure levels. Most of the information is operations. Most of the information are recommendations from staff with respect to what funding is available given what you have. And it really comes down to an expenditure level discussion. So I think 3 hours on December 2nd should do it. Happy to come on Saturday, but I'm not sure that's necessary.
If we don't wrap on Monday, it'll be difficult to schedule another meeting.
I don't see a problem wrapping on Monday. It's up to council.
Okay, well, we either need a motion to extend. Does council want to meet on Saturday? Show of hands, who would like to?
Question.
Yes.
I thought we had more options after the December 2nd as well.
Yes, we did.
Correctly. So like, even if we don't finish on Monday, it sounds like there would still be an option after. But hopefully we will finish but I'm pretty sure there was another option.
The next, sorry, I'm on the wrong week.
I would prefer not Saturday myself as well.
Okay.
Only if it works out for everyone else.
I'll just take a show of hands. Who would like to be here on Saturday?
Sure. Finish it.
Okay, so Saturday's meeting is canceled. We will reconvene on Monday at 6 p.m. And then we have a regular council meeting at Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. And if on Monday we do need more time, we can look at the schedule ahead of us. Okay, so with that, I'll take the closing motions.
It is moved by Councillor Nicol and seconded by Councillor Rivard. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2024-88 being a bylaw of the West Nipissing Municipality to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on November the 26th, 2024, will come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
All those in favor?
It's moved by Councillor Rivard and seconded by Councillor Nicol. Be it resolved that the meeting of council held on November the 26th, 2024 be adjourned.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody.